To Reddit, what is the most extreme/ridiculous example of strict parenting that you've ever seen? Story 1. My personal experience, all of which continued until I finally moved out. I had to put the phone up that I got at 16, paid for myself, even the bill, up on the counter, and turn it off every day at 8 p.m. It was also subject to be taken away if I didn't do my chores. Anything under 85% in class? Unacceptable. Instant grounding. And the groundings at my house was me sitting on my bed, not allowed to touch anything or speak to anyone for days at a time. No allowance/gifts outside of holidays, where I was required to put away 20% and had to get approval for whatever I spent it on. When I finally got a car, they tracked the miles every day down to the 10th of a mile, just to make sure I was only going to school and back, not stopping at gas stations, and whatever. The few times I did, grounded and had to walk to school, 11 miles. Everything I've wanted, I've had to pay myself. This means all my band fees, instrument rentals, marching band dues, my entire drum corps tour, I fundraised it, all state festivals, everything. Rated R movies or PG-13? No way, not even when I was 17. I went on a drum corps tour against my parents' wishes. I ended up developing bad knee problems as well as what I thought was a broken foot. We think of it as healed now, but I wasn't able to get it checked out at the time. As much as I complained, I was too young to have knee problems and was just over-exaggerating. Today, I still have the problems that I can't walk more than 2 flights of stairs or walk half a mile at once. Still trying to save up to get everything checked out. No insurance. Music is all I've ever had in life. I was and am a very high achiever in that regard, as well as my academics. I knew I wanted to go to school for music for years. This didn't stop my parents from grounding me for my instrument, which made it difficult to keep up my skills and set me back quite often, and also didn't stop them from trying to get my university to change my major to nursing. Lock the fridges and pantry. Snacks were forbidden. I ate the meals prepared by them and nothing else. No seconds, no anything. To see friends, I had to ask 3 days in advance, get my parents' phone numbers, have their parents meet mine, get a ride to wherever I was going, and provide a full itinerary and proof that there would be an adult directly supervising at all times. Also, when my now fiancé and I started dating, we had been best friends for 4 years at that point, I was limited to under 4 hours a day with him, as well as only 3 days a week. And only on approved dates, so no going to his house, it had to be dinner or a movie, etc. I turned to lie a lot on this. To put this in perspective, I have never been in trouble with the law. I graduated high school with honors, have never gotten a C in high school or university, and have never smoked/done drugs or anything. Never got in trouble at school, except for stealing something once when I was bullied into it, had proof and everything, marks and all. At home, every time I got in trouble was for forgetting chores or not doing them right away. I had severe ADD, so this was difficult for me. These all continued until I moved out the day I turned 18. My relationship with my parents? The only time we talk usually is when they need money. They cut me off as soon as I moved in with my boyfriend/now fiancé. Shortly after I moved out for college, I was in dorms for a while and several mental disorders made the dorms unbearable. I'm paying for my college education myself without even a co-signed loan from them. Life is hard but much better, and I'm much happier and am dealing with my own problems that I have developed as a result. Story 2. I was not allowed to have bad guy action figures, just good guys. I ended up drawing the bad guys on cardboard and having the worst battles ever. Story 3. My best childhood friend wasn't allowed to pick out her clothes. Even though she practically had no choice in the matter when it came to shopping, her crazy controlling father still insisted on laying out her outfit for her the next day. Or at the very least approving her clothing choice. This went on until she was about 17. She got herself a job, shopped in secret, and started sneaking around so she could dress like a mega skank. Her dad once found her sack of dirty clothes, he called them, and attempted to ground her. She ran away and shacked up with an loser, and that's when we stopped hanging out. I hear she's a stripper now. Way to go, Daddy-O! Story 4. My parents were very strict. Examples. When my dad was done eating dinner, you were done eating dinner too. But you had to eat everything on your plate too. He was a quick eater too, so I'm a quick eater. Almost any infraction resulted in a belt whipping. Lie, whipping. Break something, whipping. A grade below B, whipping. Late for curfew, whipping. Not answering as quickly or as thoroughly as my dad wanted, whipping. We weren't always whipped. I was punched a couple of times, once in the stomach and once in the head. One brother was shot in the back with his BB gun when he and his friend were shooting on our property and a BB ricocheted and accidentally hit his friend. Another brother was beaten several times before he was 6 and just ignored it because he wasn't salvageable. My parents are the main reason it took me so long to have a child of my own. I didn't want to f them up. I now know myself well enough at 40 to realize I won't make all the mistakes my parents did. I'm not going to defend my family, much anyway, but the times and locations of my upbringing were a little different, I guess. I grew up in the deep south in the 70s. Punishment was a bit harsher, at least in my understanding, and everyone got spanked, if not whooped. My last spanking, that wasn't fun, wink wink, was from the vice principal of my school. 3 licks for talking in study hall. That being said, I was a fairly happy kid. I didn't feel it was just normal. My dad, while being a prick, did teach me a lot of things. To stand up for yourself, to work hard, to respect people, and to help people. He may not have always practiced what he preached, but I did learn from him. I'm now a well-rounded, fairly happy adult, successful by many standards, over my childhood for the most part. I credit my wife for most of it. I do feel bad for my 2 brothers, though. While my parents were more strict with me because I was the oldest, they didn't cope as well. My youngest brother is, I think, a sociopath. Not in a violent way, but in an emotionless way. My middle brother has a lot of social issues and maybe bipolar. Neither is getting help. Neither want it or can afford it. Thank you, US healthcare system. I didn't have it great, but there are lots of people that had it much, much worse. Story 5. In high school, I babysat a kid who was 10 or 11. I was a latchkey kid at 6, but hey, all types. I showed up like I usually do for my new jobs with the babysitter kit. A duffel bag full of entertainment that went over well with every parent before his. Dragon Slayers is a kid's book about a princess who makes an evil witch see the error of her ways. Vetoed. The swords are bad. A plastic sword. Vetoed. The swords are still bad. A Superman cape? Vetoed. Superman is the golden calf or something. Still a little unclear. Star Wars? Vetoed. Evil wizards. Forbidden Bridge? It's a board game. Vetoed. Pagan god idol. Only the duffel bag made it through that door. He was one cool kid though, surprisingly. Super religious, but again, takes all kinds. Sweet, smart, and super chill. When I was over, all we did was watch VeggieTales and Indiana Jones, the first and third ones only. But it was an easy job and he only tried to convert me a little bit. I never tell people my religion, so he didn't have much to go off of. Eventually, I was allowed to babysit him at my place, and despite my best efforts, the only video game I could hook him on was a submarine math game. It was fun, okay? We decided to replace the computer, and I offered his mom the old tower. They didn't have a computer, and he likes the educational games on it. She said no because she didn't want him to have access to the internet. I assured her that there was no way to access the internet from the computer. It was so old that it predated the internet and couldn't be connected. She told me that he was a smart kid and would figure out a way and would not accept the computer. Poor kid was standing there the whole time in near tears. Halloween came around, and where I lived it was a babysitter tradition to show up in costume and offer to take the spawn trick-or-treating. I showed up as his hero, well, cross-dressing hero, Indiana Jones. Hat, whip, jacket, and everything. The kid nearly exploded. I told his mother I could take him trick-or-treating if she wanted. I tried to be quiet, remember him overhearing and crying about the old computer. She was obviously loudly restating my request and turning it down. The kid looked crushed behind her. She assured me that they'd already been out. It was 5. Everyone at the church had put out tables with candy, and all the kids had gotten their trick-or-treating done in only 15 minutes. It was so convenient, so no thank you. She shut the door. Poor kid. I have nothing against being religious, but religion wasn't even a factor in him not getting a computer or trick-or-treating. It was just plain ignorance about the technology and the reason kids like Halloween. Hint, not convenience. Story 6. There was a kid in my school who wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons, and he would tell his mom if someone tried to watch it if he was around. I didn't like him very much. I wasn't allowed to stay out at all as a kid. I had stupidly early bedtimes up until I was 18. Figured out pretty quickly that my mom just wanted to get rid of me. She would keep checking on me, yelling and screaming if I wasn't asleep, and I wasn't even allowed to read a book. I would just sit and watch kids my age and younger players from outside when I was a kid. The annoying thing was, I was expected to be away from the house all day in the summer holidays. I would just go and grab my bike and cycle around the tiny town all day doing nothing. A lot of the time, I would end up in the park, hiding around the pond, watching kids my age playing football or soccer, just hanging out. She made sure I didn't have any friends. I wasn't allowed to go to people's houses or have people over. I was made to feel awful if I even tried, and I gave up at an early age. She never let me have parties or even have anyone over on my birthday. I didn't even attempt to go out with people after I was 9 or 10. I couldn't make any mistakes, otherwise it was like the world ended in our house. I was this awful kid who was always bad and was treated that way even if I didn't do anything that warranted the yelling, screaming, and hitting. I always felt like I was failing even though I got good grades and I didn't get in trouble. But if any little thing happened, it was bad. She wouldn't let me have a lift to school no matter how sick/hurt I was. I wasn't even allowed to be sick or hurt. She would yell at me if I asked or wanted to stay home. When I got sick from stress when I was 8 to 10, she didn't even try and make me feel better. She yelled at me, screamed at me, and blamed it on me. When I busted my foot in karate, it was an accident. A roundhouse kick caught an elbow. She made me walk 2 miles to school the next day. Took me over an hour and a half just to make the 15 to 20 minute trip. And she made sure my bike had punctured tires so I couldn't ride it. I wasn't allowed to go get it checked out either. It was badly swollen, black and painful, but she told me it was fine. Story 7. I was talking with my therapist who deals with families, and she told me about the 6th grade girl who got grounded for having bad grades in math. Even though she does all her homework, she just doesn't understand it. Her parents refuse to help her with it, so she never learns. Her stepmom put a gate on to keep the girl in her room. When she gets home from school at 4 o'clock, she is not allowed to have a snack because her stepmom doesn't want her to get fat. This girl's stepmom had 2 other children with her father, and these kids are treated as favorites. Anyway, the girl had to stay behind the gate and always has to be doing some kind of schoolwork until she goes to bed. If her family's watching a movie together, she can't join. Every Saturday, the girl has to do her laundry. One day, the family had a babysitter watching the kids, and the girl wanted some kind of social interaction, so she went to do her laundry on a day other than Saturday. The stepmom found out and was furious. This poor girl sits as close to the gate as possible just to be able to watch her siblings play because she has no other way to interact. My therapist told me that when the stepmom came in to talk about her bad daughter, her eyes were super red and glassy. She was obviously very and I thought my parents were bad. Story 8. Some friends and I were planning a sleepover. One friend's parents wouldn't let them go because they were worried we'd break out into gay or I'm serious. Story 9. A friend in high school had terrible parents. They made him pay for the food he ate out of their pantry, and were all around ridiculously strict. His older sister ran away at 18. I'm surprised they weren't taken from them by authorities, honestly. Also, once he was given a $700 to $800 Taylor acoustic guitar by a generous man at his church, and his parents took it from him and later sold it because it was a distraction from his all-A grades. Something about playing guitar as a privilege that he had to earn or some bullshit. Story 10. My friend's father has a list of rules for his house that, if you just read them over, seem like regular family rules. No drugs, be home by 9, have dinner at 6:30, do your homework, and don't take things. Nothing weird, right? Wrong. Any kind of drug found in his possession, prescription or over-the-counter, not even cough drops, grounded for a month. Not home by 6:30 p.m.? No food. Not home by 9 p.m.? Locked out. He had to walk to my house on multiple occasions just to find a place to sleep. But by far the worst of the worst was that anything found in his possession that was believed to not be his, must be stolen or should and will be destroyed, trashed, and thrown away. He had an autographed painting of 2D from the band Gorillaz that was a gift from a mutual friend, ripped up the moment he got home. Story 11. My parents were fundamentalist Christians, think the Duggars. Some stuff from growing up. I knew parents who had not allowed their kids to call them mom/dad. It was ma'am and sir. My parents tried this, but gave up after a week because I think they saw how silly it was. The rest of this stuff my parents did. 2. Girls must wear skirts and dresses because pants are sexist and show off their feminine figure. 3. No reading a book or watching a movie unless an elder of the church, father or someone else, had seen/read and approved it first. 4. No secular music. No Christian rock because drums are the devil's way of inciting sexual lust. 5. Homeschool, creationism, anti-feminism, just miseducation in general. 6. I was not allowed to call my best friend on the phone because he was a boy and girls don't call boys. 7. No computers because porn and other anti-Christian stuff. I didn't go online until I was 18. 8. One year they decided that Christmas was too secular and we were not going to get presents anymore because of Jesus. Ugh, it was an awful way of growing up. As a percussionist, I must be a sex beast. Story 12. My little brother's girlfriend has the most disgusting, controlling mother I have ever encountered. This woman is crazy and dictates every aspect of this poor girl's life. She has to get over an 80% on every single project or test she has, or else she's punished and has to break up with my brother. And every other time she doesn't do exactly what her parents want. Everything she hands in must be proofread by her mother to ensure it was good enough. She is only allowed to apply to certain universities for certain programs. Following her actual dream is strictly prohibited. If she does, she will be completely cut off. Her mother took away her password for the university applications website and locked it in her jewelry box to ensure she doesn't secretly apply for any university. I could go on, but I won't because it'll just get me riled up again. This woman is the very definition of a dictator parent. Story 13. I have so many. Had to ask permission anytime I wanted food or a drink. Not that bad, right? Well, this included water. Also not allowed to watch any slightly off-color movies or TV shows. I wasn't even allowed Teletoon, not sure of the American equivalent. Grounded from reading because it happened to be a thing I liked doing. Not allowed to stop playing a video game until after I beat a hard part, even if I was crying. Still hungry after a meal? Drink water. Nearly got in trouble for saying "hasta la vista, baby" while playing because the movie it was from was inappropriate. Had to write hundreds of lines as punishment for various things. I wrote more lines at home than the worst kids at school. I learned to write with my left hand for a while because my right one would cramp up too badly to finish. My school called CAS once because I was crying at my desk at school. I had a headache and I didn't want to say anything because in order to give me something for it, my school would have to call home and get permission or get something dropped off. And the last time they'd done that, when I got home, my dad said something like, "I work hard all day, migraines, blah blah. If you call home for something like that again, I'll give you something to complain about." Nothing came from the CAS thing. Any abuse just continued verbally/emotionally and calmed down physically. While being yelled at, basically any reaction was forbidden. Crying led to "I'll give you something to cry about" type reactions. Anger and accidental smilings were out as well. I once flinched because my father accidentally spat in my face while yelling at me, and he said something to the effect of, "What's the matter? Did I spit in your face?" with the S's representing what you might imagine. Gosh, I'm having more trouble remembering any other ones right now, but I assure you there were more. A couple more things. We weren't allowed to leave the table until we finished every single bite of food on our plate. If we stayed there until bedtime, it would be there for breakfast in the morning. My brother once put what my father considered too much ketchup on his meal because he wasn't very fond of whatever it was, probably breaded fish, so my father emptied the entire thing of ketchup onto his plate and made him eat it all. Story 14. In the 8th grade, I got a C on a mid-semester letter home in algebra, and my dentist mentioned it to my stepmom that I should improve my dental plan by brushing a little more. I spent 6 months grounded to a chair in the kitchen where all I was allowed to do was brush my teeth and do homework and algebra assignments. I was required to hand in all the odd numbers from the book every single day. On the weekends, I had 2 assignments and a pop quiz. If I got an A on the pop quiz, I got 4 hours out of the chair to sit in my room. I aced algebra for the rest of the year, but I still quote this as an absolute overreaction. The punishment did not fit the crime. Story 15. My mom had always been really into Facebook or MySpace, etc. games. She's pretty much addicted. She was really into this game for a while when she found out that she could have multiple browsers to increase the speed of her gameplay. She then discovered that she could progress in the game even faster by using another computer. She then decided to take my computer, saying that I could use it when she wasn't playing her game, which was constantly. It started to affect my schoolwork since most of it was on the computer and I had no other way to access the internet. I brought it up with my older brother, who originally gave me my computer, and he confronted her. They ended up getting into a huge fight and he ended up leaving and returning to his own home. Now, my brother had borrowed my mom tons of money and always had been an exceptional son to her, especially for someone who has the tendency to be mentally to the people she lives with. Seeing as how she treated him and pissed me off, I decided to comfort her for one last final time and take my computer back. She ends up yelling and degrading me while saying I can take my computer back. I started to take the computer and then she grabs my shoulders in a really hard grip. I try to get her off, but she ends up slamming my head into the ground. A huge bump was left there, and I end up taking the house phone on a prepaid cell phone into my bathroom. She ends up disconnecting the house phone so I couldn't call for help, and I end up using the cell phone and the police come. Of course, her stepfather and her side together and tell the police that I attacked my mother. Her direct words were, "She laid her hands on me," which the police took as I hit her, but she claims that she was referring to when I was trying to get her off me. The police also assumed I was grounded and was not allowed to use the computer, and that's why I attacked my mother, even though I wasn't grounded at all. They end up arresting me, putting me on house arrest for 60 days, originally supposed to be 30 days, but my prosecutor was a dick and lied about what the judge signed, putting me in after-school troubled teenager programs, counseling, and having to deal with constant court dates over the next year. Child Protective Services also got involved and implemented family counseling, which turned into marriage counseling, and that didn't help since they ended up getting a divorce sometime afterward. In the end, the judge didn't even understand why I was standing in front of her, considering how much solid proof I had that I had never hit my mother. All the charges were dropped, which they also said was a felony, but it turns out it wasn't.
Teachers of Reddit. What clicked about a pupil after meeting their parents? Story 1. Obviously, this is an extreme example here, but I had a student, an 8th grader, who was quiet to the point of absolute silence, but who did extraordinarily well with the written word. A few times he showed up with bruises, which I naturally reported, but he was adamant that they were from other students. Surprisingly, his parents came in for the parents-teacher conference and seemed relatively normal, until he went to speak for himself. I saw his father grip his arm so tight that it left a mark. I understood immediately that his parents didn't let him speak for fear of reprisal. A few weeks afterward, the kid stopped showing up to school, and word eventually got around that he got caught up in a meth lab explosion in his parents' house. It was covered head to toe in second and third-degree burns. He came back a month or so later covered in bandages. He couldn't move, write, or really do anything without excruciating pain. I'd never cried so hard as I did that day. I know it got off track, but there are specific stories that stick with you. Story 2. This one broke my heart, and it's something I still think about from time to time. Just a few months into my first year, several 5th grade students were sent home for lice. One was a small blonde girl named Jane, who was fairly quiet and shy. Her clothes were always somewhat unkempt and had a strong cigarette smoke odor. She very rarely completed her homework and hated answering questions in class. However, she was kind and attentive and performed well on her in-class assignments. We had another round of head checking about a week after the first one and found that Jane still had lice or caught lice again. She was sent home with a call to the parents to let them know. The next day, she walked into the classroom with a shaved head. Her parents shaved her hair off so that they did not have to deal with the lice again. She cried when I asked her about it. I felt horrible for her. 5th grade is a tough place to be when you have something that is obviously different about you that other kids can pick on. I could not grow her hair back for her, but I did buy her a cute hat that I allowed her to wear in my class if she wanted. It seemed to help. When I met her parents shortly after, they showed up with 3 younger kids that looked about a year apart with the same shaved haircut as Jane. The parents smelled like cigarette smoke and pet urine odor. I could hear them cursing at their kids in the hallway before I even saw them. Story 3. These children, there were 3 of them, were known for being difficult at the after-school care I worked in. I had always heard bad things about Dad, but not until I actually experienced it firsthand did I make the connection between his parenting and his kids' behavior. The eldest, 5th grade, refused to listen to us. He would often kick other children, provoke them by grabbing them and pulling them in close, or just act out in a verbally abusive way. When we asked him to stop, he would respond with, "Screw you." The middle, 3rd grade, struggled to pay attention for more than 5 minutes and often picked on other kids by intentionally stirring them up and spreading rumors. The youngest, kindergarten, was 6, but still not entirely toilet trained, and had to repeat kindergarten because she wasn't at normal development or social levels. One afternoon, the eldest is in a pretty good mood. Because I'm curious, I ask, and he announces proudly, "Dad is picking me up early at 4 p.m. because we're going to see a movie this afternoon." This is awesome because the 3 kids are always last to be picked up. But 4 p.m. comes and goes and there's no sign of Dad. 4:30 p.m. 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 6:30 p.m. It's closing time. We got a call from Dad. I'm sorry, I got caught up. It's almost 7 p.m. before Dad arrives. As the kids grab their bags, he tries to explain to me, but he's sort of all over the place. Some actual quotes from our conversation. Don't tell the kids, but I'm so gone right now. I stayed back with some mates and had some drinks. Investment banking is stressful, so you look forward to Friday. So, you'd be, what, 20 now? What's a young pretty thing like you doing working so late on a Friday night? He offers to slip some cash to me and my coworker for the extra time. My mate is driving us home. I only trust some of my mates with a new Porsche. The nail in the coffin was when the eldest asked Dad, I thought you said we were going to see that movie tonight. To which he replies simply, Oh, yeah, sorry mate, I forgot. And at that moment, I realized that these kids were being told over and over and over, you don't really matter that much to me. About 2 months after this happened, the kids packed up and left the school with about a week's notice. Although they told us how much they hated us regularly, we hadn't ever seen them all as quiet as in that last week. We haven't seen them since. Story 4. I was a teacher's aide in an after-school care program at an elementary school. It's where the kids come after the school day ends so they can be cared for until their parents get off work. There was one boy who was a total bully and attention hound. He was stocky and tall and strong for his age, 9 at the time, and a lot of the other kids were scared of him because he demanded that they play with him and then threatened to break things if they didn't do what he wanted. He was totally disrespectful of any adult authority, just a general terror. I disliked him. He was dropped off in the morning by one babysitter and picked up by another at the latest possible time. I never saw a parent. His mother was a news reporter for the Denver Post, like a lady about town who covered the society pages and did reviews of things. Friday afternoon, this kid was being super good. He spent all afternoon drawing things for his mom and saying, My mom is coming to get me tonight. Not my babysitter's. She has the whole weekend off and we're going to do things together. Just her and me. Here's the list of all the things. Things like watching a movie, going for a walk, eating dinner together, etc. Pickup time arrived and here comes the mom, yapping away on her cell phone. Back when having a cell phone was very unusual, signing her kid out without speaking to anyone. Her son is standing there holding his pictures to show her, so excited. She shushed him and brushed off his hand. Her conversation was, Oh, yeah, I can go to review that new spa in Aspen. I'm not doing anything this weekend. Let me just drop, kid's name, at the babysitter for the weekend. Blah, blah. The kid visibly crumpled in on himself. He was silently crying as his mom yanked him out the door, while she yapped on her phone, not even as much as a, Hi, honey, to her son. I did my best to be very understanding, caring, and attentive to the kid after that, asking him how his day went and praising him when he behaved well. I wish I knew what became of him. I left to go to college, but I know whenever I saw his mom's byline in the paper, I wanted to kick her in the head. She died recently and I was like, good. I may be a horrible person, but that kid was simply a chihuahua and a handbag to her. Her obituary said she was especially devoted to her son, and I wanted to puke. All I could see was that little boy with his drawings in his hands, brushed aside by his mother, collapsing in on himself. I hope he's okay now. Story 5. A girl in my 7th grade class was really bright, but almost never turned in her homework, so she just skated by on her test scores. One time I commended her for helping another student who didn't understand the assignment, only to realize that night that she didn't do her own. I called her parents in and quickly realized they're the type that has an answer for everything, and were all too quick to put the responsibility on me as if I should stand over their daughter to make sure she works. I turned to ask the girl what she thought since she had been completely quiet, and her parents began to answer for her again. I put my index finger up and said, No, you've had your turn. I want to hear what she thinks about all this. Well, she apparently really appreciated that, because she went on for about 30 minutes about all her views on education. In the end, I kept her parents quiet and told her that if she was willing to talk about such a big game, she needs to back it up and do the work without her parents or me interfering. She didn't miss another assignment all year. Proud teacher moment. Story 6. Not yet a teacher, but studying to be one. In one of my major field experiences, there was a kid who was insanely competitive. He would take everything as a challenge and would accuse others of cheating if he lost. He even challenged me, a 19-year-old student at the time, to a race. I told him it really wouldn't be fair since I was fully grown, and he started berating me that I was scared to race him. Mind you, he was 9 at the time, so the end of the year is coming around and we had a field day where parents volunteered to do games for the kids, and it was supposed to be a fun day full of popsicles and school games. His parents had a relay race, spin around the bat, jump rope a certain distance, etc. And when it was his turn, they encouraged him to cheat by not following their rules, and got upset because some poor girl dropped the bat, obviously meaning she would be disqualified. They also brought a tug-of-war rope, and it was the girls of the class versus the boys. The girls being outnumbered, my field experience teacher put me on their team. I decided it wouldn't tug so that it was a bit fairer, but once again, the student's parents started getting red-faced, telling him to win. I looked at my field experience teacher and she just nodded and I pulled. The kid got knocked down a peg. Story 7. I was an elementary teacher's aide for several years in college. We were having a parent-teacher conference with a struggling 5th grader and his parents. The poor kid was bright, but somewhat lazy and reading at barely a 1st grade level. The teacher laid out what we've been working on with the student individually for the last few months to try to improve his reading and getting him engaged in learning. The teacher then gently suggested that the kid should be practicing his reading at home with an adult. I suggested that since the kid loved Pokemon, there were some juvenile novelizations of Pokemon stories at the local bookstore that he may enjoy, and that it would help interest and engage him in improving his reading comprehension. I'll never forget the withering look the father gave me. We don't have extra money lying around to buy something that he can do at school. I was 19 at the time and shaky around confrontation, so I lowered my gaze and shut my mouth. The teacher reassured the parents that we were doing everything in our power to help their child, that we would continue helping their son improve his reading. That was that. A few days after this, the students were taking turns at the end of the day telling us something good that happened to them that week. A ritual that I really admired that the teacher started. The kids loved it. When it was the struggling student's turn, he stood up and got an empty video game case and controller out of his bag and said, "This week my dad brought the new PlayStation and lots of new games, and we've been staying up late every night playing." I almost cried in frustration and pity. Please understand I have absolutely nothing against kids playing video games, but it has to be in moderation. His parents sat there and told us that they had no extra money to help the kid not only get better at learning, but actually enjoy doing it with something he loved, like a goddamn $4.99 book about Pokemon. But then they turn around and spend hundreds of dollars on a new PlayStation and games. Maybe buy your kid a book about video games, fool. So frustrating. Story 8. Not a teacher, but a student. In kindergarten, we had this kid who was really odd and smelled funny, but he seemed cool, so we would hang out at recess. I had a birthday party, and it was only supposed to last maybe a few hours. All of the kids but him went home fairly early, but it was really late and his parents still hadn't shown up. I was getting tired and wanted to go to bed, so my parents set up some blankets for us in the living room and we had a sleepover. At 2 a.m., his parents finally show up, after multiple calls with no answer. Instantly, I realized what was up. Even as a small child, I knew these parents were the definition of white trash. They reeked of alcohol. My mom's side of the family is full of alcoholics, so I knew what it smelled like. They also told some bullshit story about how they had new tires on their car and the speedometer showed the wrong speed and they got pulled over and some other bullshit. It all clicked why he acted so odd and why he smelled. It was cigarette smoke. At the start of 1st grade, he never showed up, and the month into the year, he was there for a few days. Then randomly, in 3rd grade, he showed back up again for a few weeks. I never saw him again after that. I looked him up on Facebook a while back, and it looks like he's following in his parents' footsteps, falling into every white trash stereotype. I asked my parents about this kid a while ago, and they said that the reason he wasn't with us in school for a few years is that he got taken away by Child Protective Services, which my mom called. Then he came back at a certain time because that's when his parents got him back, but he was taken away again and that's why he left us. I feel bad for the kid because at first, he was really nice, but over time as I saw him again, he became more mean and rude. Such awful parents. Story 9. Had a kid that you looked at and it was very much a lights are on but nobody's home sort of feeling. I teach high school, so sometimes that's just the phase they're in, but this one was basically living perpetually in that mode. The kid has an individualized educational plan, which is a legal special education doc. I can't reveal what was in there, but it was, suffice to say, generic. So it feels like pieces are missing. Days go on, the kid is in the gold standard of something is up. Completely illegible handwriting to the point it doesn't resemble writing. You ask about what we're doing in class and the answer is so random and off task that if the kid didn't look and act fairly childlike for the age you would assume hardcore drug use. But this kid, if anything, had really bad genes and didn't know what drugs were. Mom comes back to school night, which is supposed to be 5 minutes with a class of parents, a nice, how do you do, and everyone moves on. She corners me, immediately starts telling me about her concerns that I don't fully appreciate her miracle baby who was mute until 8, didn't walk until 4, walked backward first, and had an IQ of about 60. They told her this kid would never make it in school, and I thought you just could tell that her baby was delayed, and indeed was a miracle because something is wrong with him. That's why she blocked all mention of those conditions from the documents, because people would never guess, otherwise, miracle. When the word miracle comes up from a parent, it always explains a lot. Story 10. I was a daycare teacher while going to college. I had one kid who was a total freaking nightmare. Andrew. He was only a toddler, but imagine the terrible 2s and then increased them by 10 times. Kids at that age are still learning proper behavior, but the rest of my kids understood basic manners. Andrew was a hurricane in human form. If there was a fight, Andrew was in the middle of it. He was the kid who'd start screaming in the middle of quiet time just to cause chaos. Wouldn't do what he was told, wouldn't listen to anybody, wouldn't keep his hands to himself. Every teacher in the place constantly wanted to strangle him, myself included. Andrew was the only kid known by name to the entire teaching staff, even at the elementary school level. People would be like, "There goes Andrew's teacher, the poor girl." He was that kid. Then I met his mom. I'm positive she was married, but I never saw Andrew's dad, never even met him. The guy didn't seem involved in his son's life at all. The mom was a nervous wreck and talked to Andrew like he was a doll with a fatal disease who was going to die any day. Not a real person with feelings of his own or who needed to learn a little self-autonomy. She insisted on doing everything for him as if he were completely incapable. At that point, I realized I had to start praising the shit out of this kid, because he certainly wasn't getting any direction or positive attention at home. So I waited for my opportunity. It took a few days, simply because Andrew was such a holy terror, but then suddenly, I'll never forget that fateful Tuesday. The kids are sitting at the lunch table waiting to wash their hands for lunch. I have to pick the first kid, and Andrew happens to be quietly sitting there with his hands folded while the other kids are jumping around in their seats. It was a true miracle. I'm sure somewhere nearby, people were reporting sightings of the Virgin Mary and the rivers running red. "Andrew!" I exclaimed. "Andrew's sitting so nicely. I think he gets to wash his hands first today." Andrew looked scared when I called his name because he figured he was in trouble again. Then he figured out what was going on. The kid got out of his seat and approached me looking dazed like he'd been unexpectedly called up to accept an Emmy. The other kids immediately went dead because they wanted to be picked after Andrew. At that moment, Andrew became the star of the age 2 classroom. The other kids even started including him in their games. This started a feedback loop. Andrew behaved better, so he got more praise, then he behaved even more. I'd reward Andrew by letting him hold the storybook for me during story time, or helping me with other things. Pretty soon he became like my personal assistant, because I'd turn around and he was just there waiting to help me with something. That kid loved helping. It was incredible. Overnight he became like a well-mannered Clark Kent. I think Andrew finally developed a sense of pride, something his anxious mom never allowed him. He wanted to wash his own hands, try the toilet by himself, and open doors, which he couldn't quite reach, but he improvised with a chair a few times until I caught him. A few weeks into this, I saw his mom at the school. She was trying to tie Andrew's shoes, but he insisted, "No, I can do it." And he did. The look on her face was hilarious. It's like she finally realized he was a real person. I had to leave that job to go back to school a few months later. I was surprised to discover that telling Andrew was the hardest of all my kids because I'd come to like him the most. By that point, he'd started calling me mommy, and while he stopped after I corrected him, it was clear he still designated me with that role in his mind. When I said I was leaving, he kept asking why and didn't understand. That was hard. I stopped by the school a year later to say hi to my old colleagues, and who do I happen to see but a few of my kids? They'd all grown so much in just a year, but I recognized them instantly. The kids saw me but quickly lost interest. I was just some lady to them now, except for Andrew. He said nothing, but his eyes never left me. I wonder where he is now. Story 11. I worked for several years as a case manager for adults with mental illness, which put me in their homes on a daily basis. The one case that haunts me still is the family with 3 semi-functional family members. Mom, son, daughter, the daughter's small 1 to 2 year old child, and the son's live-in friend. The mother and son were both our clients, with various sundry diagnoses. To say the house was filthy is not giving due diligence to the facility of the English language, but I suppose for this narrative it will suffice. At one point they somehow procured a little yappy dog who proceeded to poop everywhere. It got so bad we wouldn't go in the house, just meet with him on the porch, as no one ever seemed to clean anything, at all, ever. Enter Child Protective Services, or CPS. They left the child in the home with a family of mentally ill folks, dog poop everywhere, and the gods of filth alone know what horrors. The rationale was, a child needs to be with family. A short time later, a neighbor called the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, or ASPCA for short. They came and took the dog, declaring the home unfit for the pet. I have no idea what became of the child as I eventually changed jobs and lost contact with those involved. But occasionally when people bring up work war stories, this is my go-to tale. What is a seemingly harmless parenting mistake that will majorly fuck up a child later in life? Story 1. I found that when my parents teased me about stuff I was clearly uncomfortable with, it made me tell them less later in life. I have a good relationship with my parents, but I don't tell them lots about my life because it's easier if they don't know or tease me about it. Story 2. Never saying sorry to your kids. My mom only just recently started telling me sorry when she gets worked up. It's built up such resentment for her over the years. I also have trouble saying sorry myself because of it. Tell your kids sorry, especially if you overreact to something they did. Story 3. Not following through with your promises. If you told your child you were buying ice cream tomorrow in the hopes that they'd forget, and the next day when they ask, you tell them no, then they'll see you as unreliable. Ice cream is just the first thing that came to my mind. I'm sure someone else can explain better what I'm trying to say here without sounding so ridiculous. Story 4. Never telling your child that you were wrong and that you're sorry. Just never once occurred. My father never once said I'm sorry to me. He was human. There were plenty of times he should have. My kids have heard from me plenty. Story 5. A seemingly harmless mistake is rewarding your child with something when they do something they already enjoy. Take, for example, reading. If a child just enjoys reading, let the child read without giving any reward. Once you start rewarding the child for that act, their intrinsic motivation gets replaced. It's called the overjustification effect. Story 6. In a different vein of thought, making finances a taboo subject. Financial illiteracy can be devastating once entering adulthood. Want to keep your children from making your own money mistakes? Don't be too proud to teach them what those mistakes were. To add to that, I don't mean robbing your children of their innocence by putting the weight of your debt on them at an early age, but rather teaching them how to properly budget their money as they earn it, how to build savings, what credit is, and how to responsibly manage it. Credit utilization, the danger of revolving balances, not using credit as an emergency fund. Teach them about predatory interest rates and the true cost of a loan. Set realistic expectations for costs of living, etc. Story 7. Don't smother your kids. My mom quit having her own life the moment my brother and I were born. She was an incredibly devoted and loving mother who was very kind to us. But when we were born, she stopped having friends, did not work, and was home every single day from when I was born to when I moved out in my early 20s. She was very easy to upset because she had no other source of self-esteem. And any time I screwed up, and I screwed up a lot, it was as if I had levied a very personal attack against her. In the last 5 years or so before I left, I don't think we had a single conversation that didn't drive her to tears, and I promise it wasn't that bad. I constantly felt cornered and stressed and fell into depression as a defense mechanism, and she took my resulting lack of performance very personally, creating a very treacherous cycle that was only broken when I enlisted and finally got away. To this day, I often feel like I'm a bad person who failed to live up to her love. Story 8. Not creating a safe space for your kids to tell their secrets and make mistakes. When I was younger, I excitedly confided in my mom about my first boyfriend. But instead of calmly talking me through this, she immediately brought my dad into the conversation and they both yelled at me and forced me to break up with him. Story 9. Not stopping when your child says stop. Whether it's teasing, tickling, or wrestling, kids who have parents that don't respect their boundaries always seem to end up being the biggest dicks and bullies because they've learned they don't have to respect other people's feelings. Story 10. Mocking them, laughing at them. Adults do it to each other all the time, but kids who haven't been immersed in the background cruelty of our culture for years don't understand that it's just the language of the land, and not that they themselves are particularly unworthy of respect. Story 11. Well, realistically, it'd be a helicopter parent. You always want to look out for your kid right, make sure they're not doing things they're not supposed to do, and walk in without knocking. It ruins a relationship with a kid because even though you have a sense of privacy, the kid doesn't, and will always be paranoid of anyone entering the room without warning. It ruins a kid. Would my mom let me do this? Is she okay with it? Story 12. Giving into your kids' wants and desires without upholding discipline and consequences will give your kids a large uphill battle to climb later. I say this because my parents babied me a lot when I was young. I never had to do anything I didn't want to do. Example, when I started getting bad grades because I wasn't doing my homework, my parents would have conferences with my teachers so they could give me extra credit. I had a rude awakening in college when I realized how hard life is. I 100% love and adore my parents. And who's to say if they did discipline me more that I'd have turned out any different? Probably not, but you never know. But when I have kids, I already know a few things I do differently. Story 13. Pretty much telling you that whatever activity that you enjoy doing is annoying or dumb. I used to love to sing. I was in the chorus and would play my favorite songs over and over to learn the words. Not only did my sisters tease me for it, but my parents told me to shut up constantly, so I stopped singing. It must have been terrible, right? I sing when I'm alone or jokingly with some friends. What really broke me was when I went to visit everyone for the holidays, and my sister said that she was surprised I never pursued singing since I seemed to love it so much when I was younger. I nearly started crying and had to bite my tongue so I wouldn't scream at her for being one of the reasons I stopped. It's always funny for the ones doing the teasing, but it actually hurts the ones being teased, especially when it's coming from the people who are supposed to love you. Story 14. When I was 4, my parents adopted a kitten. Of course, I had never seen anything quite so delightful before, and I could barely keep my hands off the little furball. So about 2 or 3 days passed, I get up in the morning and walk out and ask, "Where's the kitten?" And my parents told me that he died, implying that my roughhousing had killed it. I was terrified to touch an animal for several years thereafter. In fact, they had simply given the kitten back to the people they got it from. Story 15. Treating crying as if it's something only weak people do. My dad in particular used to yell at me for crying, which only made me cry more, which made him yell more, and you get the point. In high school, I tried to bring up the possibility of me having anxiety problems that I'd spoken to the school counselor about because my friends made me go since they were worried. He told me I was just a drama queen. I can't express that I'm anxious or stressed around my dad because others have it worse. Even now, I'm 21 and seeing a psychiatrist in a couple of weeks because I've just felt so bad lately, and I would never let my dad know. I think I'd rather die than my dad know I've been seeing a psychiatrist and discussing the possibility of me having OCD with a said psychiatrist, which does explain a lot and is actually kind of comforting for me to know, because he'd get so mad at me for being weak. Story 16. Making them give physical affection when they don't want to. If Uncle Bob makes them uncomfortable, don't make them give him a hug. If Aunt Karen freaks them out, don't make them give her a kiss. Of course, it's important that they be kind, but don't teach them that the feelings of others are more important than their bodily autonomy. Story 17. Never showing up for events. I remember my parents didn't come to most of my chorus concerts. It really sucked to see my classmates' families cheer them on while my parents were absent. I brought home one of my chorus program papers to show my parents, and I found it in the trash the next day. I was sad because I wanted to keep it, but seeing it in the trash, I didn't want it anymore. I love my parents and I don't blame them for not showing up. They're small business owners and it was hard for them to find people who could work for them whenever I had concerts or anything. It still hurt though. Also, my mom is a clean freak. She'll discard or move any stray papers laying around. She probably didn't think much of it, and she might not have even realized what it was. She can't read English that well, it's her third language. After I told her, she apologized to me, so it's okay. I thought I should add that my little sister and grandma would come to them, but my relationship with my grandma isn't great. It's just not the same as having your parents there, if that makes sense. Story 18. This is serious. I carry deep regrets over this. My kids were really wounded by my failing to properly memorialize the deaths of their sisters. We had 2 normal kids. Then my wife was pregnant and gave birth to 2 babies as a very late-term miscarriage. I held them and they were small babies. Charity's birthday is in 2 days. Hannah was born October 10. We thought we did all the right things. We took the remains and with our children, put one into the sea and another in a friend's lake. We talked about the loss occasionally, but we didn't do a lot of things we could have done. Memorialize their birthdays, Christmas ornaments for them, that sort of tangible stuff that kids can grasp. As it turns out, both of them grieved those losses deeply. They were 4 and 5 and we thought they barely understood it, but we were wrong. And it really wounded them and they exploded with anger and hurt at us a couple of years ago. We handled it well, we got counseling, we apologized, and we started correcting the course. Right now, neither of them really speaks to us. They cannot seem to forgive us for that oversight of not properly memorializing their sisters, and it's tearing us apart. We were so close, and now they're so distant and act so incredibly injured over this. And I'm a professional in an associated area, and so is my wife. We can't even grasp the depths of this loss from a professional, let alone personal perspective. So include your kids in these sorts of hurts and losses. That's my deepest regret as a parent. Story 19. In my experience, the inability to keep a conversation light and positive. For example, if I received an A on a test and I brought it up at the dinner table, within 5 minutes we would be having a tense discussion about some other class I should be doing better in, or it has turned negative on one of my siblings. Why the heck would I bother bringing something up if it's going to remind you of something you yell about regularly? In the same vein, the inability to withhold more important discussions for another time. My parents never considered planning a sit-down with me for a serious discussion about something I'm doing wrong, or did wrong. Rather, they'd spring it on me when I'm trapped in the car with them, or at the dinner table, or when I'm least expecting it or simply need to be doing something else. Important discussions were simply interjected into everyday life, and it led to me having bad anxiety and the inability to just relax around my parents. This may actually be part of some larger complex I have about my parents not having healthy divisions between themselves and other individuals. Like, they don't respect or acknowledge that their kids are fully separate people who think in different ways. If I was living in a way that disappointed my parents throughout my adult life, they would die young and allow it to take decades of their lives because they're so intertwined in other people's business. They would never think their adult children deserve the respect of like a coffee date or lunch in order to discuss a big issue. It would just be spewed out at the wrong time. They have no emotional intelligence and are the most judgmental people I've ever met. Story 20. This is probably going to be buried in the comments, but it is so important to me that I'm going to write it anyway. My parents unconsciously taught me to value external validation over everything else, and it has been the cause of persistent depression in my adult life. Examples that seem innocent. Praising good grades and emphasizing academic achievement. Being inordinately pleased when people said good things about me to them. Encouraging me to apply for awards and scholarships, and them being super proud and boastful to others about how amazing I am. Tacking up newspaper articles about me, certificates, etc. all over the house. Writing Christmas letters that were essentially a laundry list of all my accomplishments. Telling me that I could do anything I wanted or to be anything I wanted, that I was exceptional. I think you get the idea. All this taught me that I'm only worth what I can do. It has taught me that I'm only as valuable as others deem me to be. Outwardly, I appear poised and accomplished and successful. Inwardly, I have an exceedingly low, virtually non-existent sense of self-worth. I push myself constantly to do more and achieve more and earn more accolades. I burn out and have panic attacks. I feel numb inside. I don't know who I am or what I actually enjoy because I've been groomed only to do what others want of me. I'm almost 40 and basically completely lost. Story 21. Flex his fingers. Being overly rigid about table manners, to the point of physically correcting how your 19-year-old child is holding a fork over the age of about 12. Timing your children's meals and taking their plates away if they go over time. Mocking them for not knowing how to eat unfamiliar foods correctly. I get an eating disorder. My brother gets an eating disorder. Everyone gets an eating disorder. Spend more time dwelling on how evil and wrong premarital sex, dating, and the gays are than you do on "you are my child and I love you." A good way to make sure your son is fucking his girlfriend, who fortunately knows more about safe sex than he does because you never bothered to teach him. One of the daughters has a girlfriend, and the other is dating someone older than you are. And they all plan to get married sometime in the next 5 years without inviting or informing you, using anything they tell you confidentially against them. Want your kids to never trust you or anyone with personal information? Way to go! Making a really big deal out of them displaying the behavior you want. Oh wow, look everyone, Nina finally came out of her room. Wow Nina, I bet that was really hard for you. By 16, Nina comes home only to sleep. Story 22. Trying to teach them a lesson, but actually just cruelly punishing or criticizing them with a veil of doing the child a kindness. My parents call me a bitch, as well as other expletives, and criticize my every behavior after each outing or social gathering. It's resulted in a deeply ingrained self-hatred complex, and I have no plans to continue to stay in contact with them after I'm no longer financially dependent on them. My parents would also yell at me and my siblings in front of our company to make sure everyone know how awful we were. They go from trying to be our best friends one minute to spending hours yelling or lecturing us for minute mistakes, when the only two people in your life who are supposed to love you unconditionally are the ones who make you feel the worst about yourself. It destroys the way you believe you deserve to be treated. I was in an emotionally abusive relationship for months because I was used to being treated like that by my parents, and I genuinely thought it was okay. It took direct intervention from my best friends to wake me up and see the truth. Nobody deserves to have their parents verbally abuse them under the semblance of helping them, because it helps nobody. It only damages those receiving it. Story 23. Subtle pressures to follow societal expectations. I've had the fortunate experience to have some of the most amazing parents life could bring. They never forced me to follow any particular path in life. They made it clear that I am who I am and that there's nothing wrong with it. I was never told to be a man, or that's a little girly, or anything of the sort. And now I have an amazing relationship with them, and I'm very content in my current path to be an aerospace engineer. Also, lack of respect or privacy. Obviously, as a kid, they had to put their foot down many times, but overall, if I had an issue with the way they approached something, they taught me to go to them and discuss the issue civically. That gave me the tools to handle many situations where I'm interacting with someone in authority, teachers, police officers, etc., and with people in general, girlfriends, friends, family, etc. Final one, taking mental issues seriously. My parents made it clear that it's okay not to be okay. They made sure that if I ever was depressed or anything, I could get help and they would make sure I was okay. When I was struggling with school in middle school, they were the ones who helped me go to the doctor, who then diagnosed me with ADHD. That helped immensely. Having them support me helped me realize that I could overcome whatever challenge I was dealing with, which led to me being able to get off the medication and function perfectly well without it. This attitude also helped me become more sensitive to other people's issues. My friends have anxiety, ADHD, depression, anger management issues, etc. They all know that they can come to me and talk, even if they just want to rant. Remember, kids often emulate their parents. Above all, show unconditional love and support. It won't go unappreciated. Story 24. Gender disappointment and expectations. Don't want a girl and get a girl? Get the fuck over it. You're a goddamn adult. This is an innocent child. Don't call her by the masculine form of her name instead of her actual name. Don't make her keep a boyish haircut and play boy sports if she doesn't want to. Don't punish her for your disappointment. To this day, I'm extremely uncomfortable with dressing and acting femininely or using my legal name. I definitely don't feel like I'm a boy, but I sure as shit don't feel comfortable dressing or looking the part of a woman. And I'm almost 30 years old. Swallow your hopes and dreams for your child and keep your mouth shut. What you want for your child versus what they want to do with their life are two different things. Don't force your wishes on them. They will rebel and hate you. I was never going to get an MBA and a degree in a foreign language, but that doesn't mean I'm not successful and don't have a fulfilling career. Don't guilt or cajole your child into fulfilling your dreams. You had your own life, your own choices, and your own chance. Let them have theirs. Your children are not an extension of you. They're their own people. You're there to help guide them to their hopes and dreams. My husband and I have always told our son, if you want to be a ditch digger when you grow up, we'll be just as proud of you as we would if you were an astronaut. All we ask is that you try to be the best ditch digger that ever was. Do whatever you love, but do it well. Thankfully, he seems to be a math whiz, but the support is always there, no matter what. Story 25. I know this is a little late, but I'll add my own personal experience to this. Show your kids that you're on their side, unless they majorly fuck up. I was bullied a lot as a kid and got into trouble because of the zero tolerance rules in school. And I can count the number of times my parents openly backed me up on one hand. The rest of the time, it was a stern discussion, me getting yelled at about how I shouldn't be getting in trouble, even if it wasn't my fault or even if I didn't fight back and came home bruised or bloodied. One of the times I got into trouble because I defended myself, and I was so scared of my parents getting upset at me that I tried to run out of the school to hide somewhere that they couldn't find me. I think I was about 7. It took me until I was in college to realize they always were on my side, and complained often to the school about how I was being targeted, but they just never told me or showed me, because they didn't want me to feel like it was okay to get into fights, even if it was in self-defense, because they didn't want me to get kicked out of school. Unfortunately, that was too late to find out, because now I have really deep-rooted fears of any form of confrontation, and I will literally avoid people if I think they don't like me or run away if I think they're mad at me. It's taken me 5 years to even start to work on it because even telling people about it in person triggers intense feelings of anxiety.
Children of helicopter parents, what was the worst or most embarrassing thing they put you through? Story 1. My mom read in my diary that I had lost my virginity to my then boyfriend, X. She called the principal of my school to tell him that X had forced me. Story 2. When I was in grade 9, my parents only allowed me to use my laptop in the kitchen to do my homework. They had blocked Facebook, but I found websites that helped me use Facebook chat. But my dad turned the internet on and off every other hour from 8 in the morning until midnight. It was ridiculous, because I could never sit down long enough to get any work done before the internet was gone, and I had to wait for the next hour. My dad found out about the chat sites I used as a workaround for Facebook and blocked those too. I resorted to using Bing Bar's Facebook chat function, which was slow and glitchy. In grade 11 and 12, my parents shut off my internet at 1 in the morning and removed parental controls. I went crazy and watched Netflix and talked to people all the time, which obviously had a negative toll on my grades. Story 3. Up until I left for college, my bedtime was 9 p.m. every night. I wasn't supposed to be on the phone past 8:30 p.m., and I wasn't allowed to go outside by myself. I couldn't have friends over after 7 p.m., and I couldn't go to a boy's house until the summer after high school. I had to show my parents my grades every semester to prove I was successful. I rode the bus until my senior year because he wouldn't take me to get my license until I was 17. He pretty much told me that I had to attend a certain college because it was X amount of time away from home. While I'm in college, he makes me show him my grades, check in once a week with 3 different family members, and makes me move home every summer. Now that I'm applying for master's programs and trying to move away, every conversation ends with an argument about me moving away and trying to start my own life. My parents were divorced, and when my mom died, I moved in with my dad and his girlfriend at the age of 10. The first time I told him no, he tried to hit me with a belt. He's been paying for my college out of the benefits I received from my mother, which I didn't even know about, until a brother from my mom's side told me about them. My dad became enraged when I found out about the money, and he cut off communication with that side of the family. Showing grades is totally normal, until they surprise visit campus trying to fact-check or when my then boyfriend himself and my grades dropped. He told me I was too stupid for college and wasting his money and needed to drop out. He and his girlfriend worked all the time, so I went to a babysitter until I was a sophomore in high school. I feel like I don't have the ability to make friends now because my social interactions were really limited due to some of his rules. I didn't really know how to have a relationship with men growing up. I just did whatever would make them happy and not get upset with me. I don't really know how to do a lot of life things myself. My boyfriend is slowly teaching me, thank God. I stayed the night at my then boyfriend's house, and my dad told me I must have just spent the last year in school sleeping around, and no one would want me because of it. And it's the longest relationship I've ever been in, and he's helping me move away. I was accepted to a master's program in Canada and one in my home state, and I'm terrified to leave, so I'm going to the in-state one. It's farther away than now, so I see it as a baby step. No one in our family lives outside an hour's drive from each other. I'm the first to go to college and actually finish, and I'm going to get away. Story 4. I wasn't allowed to hang out with girls when I was younger, and one day I was at the school park with some of my friends. There were a couple of girls there too. My mom called me on the phone to ask who I was hanging out with. I only mentioned my guy friends. Well, apparently my mom was spying on me with binoculars. The park was just a few blocks from my house. As soon as she saw the girls, she drove to the park, got out, and made a big scene about it in front of everyone and made me go home. That probably wasn't even the most embarrassing thing she's put me through. There have been countless other situations. Story 5. This is not the most embarrassing thing, but it's the only one I feel comfortable sharing. She would constantly go through my phone and read everything when I wasn't around, and I'd find out when she brought up embarrassing information in front of friends, family, or even a crush, and messaged him a long message that I don't even want to know what it said. All I know is that he was super uncomfortable when he asked me if I knew she had contacted him. The worst part about it was that I never felt a sense of freedom. I always felt watched. I was never a bad kid, but I felt violated every day and night. I felt like I never had my own sense of self. Story 6. I'm still a teenager, so I'm still dealing with my parents' helicopter habits. My parents were furious when they found out I had watched The Hunger Games at a friend's house. The same thing happens whenever I watch a movie rated PG or above. They're not there to fast forward through the kissing scenes and mild cursing. They don't allow me to spend money without telling them first. Once I bought a pack of gum without telling them, and it wasn't pretty. Long story short, I got my phone taken away for a week after being chewed out for a solid hour. My dad has software on my phone that tells him whatever I do on the internet, including texting and calling. He'll probably see this, but I don't care. They better stop typing now, or they might catch me. Story 7. When I was 17, my mother once drove to my workplace after school to check and make sure I was actually working. She then freaked out at me when I got home because she claimed I wasn't there, when really she just didn't drive all the way into the parking lot to avoid being seen since she drives such a distinct car. This was around her phase of thinking I was on hardcore drugs and sleeping with the entire male population in my town. I was an A-plus student who worked every day after school, plus weekends. I don't know when she thought I'd have time for all of that. Story 8. One of the more memorable experiences. When I was a freshman, my cousin was a senior, and through him, I made a lot of friends who were upperclassmen. So at the end of the year, I got invited to go to prom. My parents made my date, who was just a friend, come over 2 weeks before prom and basically asked him every question imaginable. They got his phone number, home number, email, and the works. He was super chill about it because my cousin had warned him beforehand. When prom actually came around, I wasn't allowed to ride in the limo with everyone else. Instead, my mom drove me in her ugly Astro van that looked like the Mystery Machine, and she had my siblings and cousins packed in there. When we got to the venue, she got off with me and asked an administrator if she could stay. Thank God he said no. Oh, and I had a curfew, 8:30 p.m. It was 7 when I got there. Ugh. Story 9. When I went away to college, my parents would call me every day. I went away to a fraternity weekend retreat during my freshman year where us pledges weren't supposed to bring our phones. I told my parents that I was going away for 3 days and not to call me. On the day we were coming back, the guy driving us got a call. He then handed me his phone and told me to call my parents. It turns out that when my parents couldn't reach me for 3 days, they came to my college and went around my dorm and half the campus asking everyone if they had seen their lost little boy. I was 18 at the time. On top of that, since I was on their family cell phone plan, they looked up all the numbers I had recently called and texted. They proceeded to call everyone, letting them know I was lost and asking if they knew where I was. This included girls that I had crushes on but barely knew, random classmates and mild acquaintances. When I got back to my worried parents waiting for me at my dorm, I found my cell phone with a bunch of messages of people asking if I was okay and letting me know my parents were looking for me. For the next day, every 1 in 5 people I walked past would ask me if I had talked to my parents because they were looking for me. Story 10. Both parents have known, to an extent, mental disorders on top of the whole helicopter thing. Illusions of grandeur from mom, delusions and paranoia from dad. Mom would walk me, a girl, through all the details of all the brutal assaults she could imagine and dazzle it up with news stories before going in public anywhere with me or if the subject of men somehow came up. Left me traumatized for a long time, not being able to look at boys or men. Looked at porn out of curiosity or something at 10 years old. Can't really remember due to the trauma that followed. They found my search history because I didn't know how to delete it or safely use the internet, and proceeded to interrogate me all night to see the extent to which I was defiled and who must have been molesting me. There was no one. I was homeschooled, and honestly almost threw out names or thought up false events. I was beaten on and off all night till I puked. Still was interrogated as I was told to clean up the puke. I could barely move. I was shaking and just felt like I was curling in on myself physically. They accused me of being defensive because I couldn't sit upright and normal. I would sit huddled up. That I had backlash welt in my right thigh for a few days. I was told repeatedly by them that this wasn't abuse and I deserved it. They had to, because they loved me and made me hug them after everything, then sleep on the couch. I could not be trusted with a room, they said. I was treated worse than a dog for a year as grounding and still had the event referenced as blackmail for years. I was about 18 by the time they stopped really talking about it. At 20 now, I learned that they actually think they may have gone too far and screwed me up mentally. You don't say. Happy conclusion for those who need to hear it. I turned out fine. We still talk, though I plan to cut ties. They're very emotionally dependent and fear that I will leave them. I distanced myself from them, somehow avoided drawing attention to them as the abusers, and got myself help by admitting myself to a mental hospital as a teen, and then continuing to seek help and getting around my entire family to do so. I don't talk about this stuff anymore, or really label my family as anything more than crazy. I just want to leave it in the past and define myself by what I do now as an adult. Story 11. As someone who works in an ER, I get tired of helicopter parents bringing in their children for ridiculous reasons, such as a nosebleed that occurred a week ago or foot pain after PE. The worst cases are when parents bring in their over 18-year-old children for drug tests. When this happens, I love to turn the legal adult and ask for their consent. This usually leads to the parent getting angry and shouting about how they're the parent and pay the insurance, etc. I then remind them that their child is now an adult, and without their express consent, I cannot perform any tests on them. I've seen many young adults refuse all lab work after this conversation. The parents usually end up calling the hospital administrator, who tells them the same thing. I'm also not allowed to give out any information over the phone, nor can I enter a patient's room without express permission. Watching people's reactions when they can't get their way is always interesting. Story 12. When I was engaged to my now husband, my parents gave me many lectures about how I couldn't lean my head on his shoulder or be alone with him. They believed it would lead him to have uncontrollable urges and that he would end up raping me. According to them, it would be my fault for working him up. These lectures increased in absurdity and became a daily occurrence. Fortunately, my husband stuck it out, and things are much better now that we live together on the other side of the country. Story 13. My parents weren't exactly helicopter parents, but my dad was very strict about movies. For instance, when I was in high school, I wanted to go to the movies with my friends to see a G.I. Joe movie. I wanted to do something fun. My dad said he wouldn't let me go unless I wrote a paper on the movie's redeeming qualities and Christian principles after I watched it. Story 14. I didn't go to any school dance or sports events, so I had no prom or anything. I wasn't allowed to go to the mall by myself when I was 19 years old. My dad would follow me around, walking about 5 feet behind me. When I was 20, I said I was going to get a cell phone and got into a big fight with my parents because they didn't want me to have one. I had been working since I was 15 and was going to pay for it myself. I couldn't lock the door to my bedroom or the bathroom, even in my early 20s. Moving out was the best thing ever. I remember when I was 12 or so, my mom, little sister, who was 7 at the time, and I went to Costco to do some shopping. My dad showed up dressed as a clown. He used to dress up for birthday parties and followed me and my little sister around honking his clown horn in our ears, yelling to all the guys that he was our dad. He still shows up at my work and tells my coworker to tell me that Daddy is here to see me. I'm 31. I think the last time I called him Daddy was when I was 7 or 8. Nobody calls him Daddy. Story 15. One night, I decided to visit my boyfriend at his apartment for some TV time and cuddles. I ended up restarting my phone and forgetting to turn it back on. While cuddling in front of the television, I fell asleep. At around midnight, my mom called, and it went straight to voicemail. Any logical person would just figure the phone died or just didn't have service. Very reasonable where I live. Not my mother. She called the cops and tried to report me missing, which ended with the police asking how long I had been gone. She responded with, about 8 hours. They told her to wait until morning. At this point, it was about 1 a.m. and I was still asleep. We both were. Fast forward about 2 hours, and my mother had called and woken up all of my friends hunting for me with no luck. She called my best friend and she told her that I was at my boyfriend's apartment. My mother now knew that I was safe and not missing. This was not enough for her, though. She ended up coming to the apartment after pestering my best friend enough for the location. My best friend didn't know the exact apartment, so she just told her the complex name and went back to bed. I woke up at almost 4 in the morning to my mother banging on the door, yelling, "Personably anxious! Open the freaking door!" I ran, thinking something was wrong, and flung open the door to find her red. Metaphorical steam was pouring from her ears. She yelled for me to get in my truck and get home now. The next day, when I went to visit my boyfriend and apologized profusely for what my mother had done, I discovered that my mom had banged on every single door until she found the right one. I was 18 at the time. It didn't take much longer before my relationship ended. This is one of very, very, very many stories. Story 16. I was in the school musical, and it was my first lead role. I was singing a duet with the cutest boy in school, even though I was playing his mom. This was my moment, and I was sure a performance would follow. Then the fire alarm went off. The stage manager signaled to us that it was just the fog machine and to keep going, so we did. The cute guy started to get nervous, so I grabbed his hand to give him strength. Imagine Tina Belcher grabbing zombie Jimmy Pasto Jr.'s butt, and you'll get a pretty good idea of how a big deal this was for me. Of course, the audience was awkwardly leaving because, the fire alarm was going off. Just then, I saw a blurry shape out of the corner of my eye. Someone was running towards me. It was a woman. She was screaming. It was my mother. She ran up to me on the stage, ripped me away from Jimmy Jr.'s arms, and screamed into my microphone. "What are you doing? There's a fire! Get these kids out of here! Who the hell's in charge here?" I was shunned for weeks, and 12 years later, my drama teacher still tells the story to his students. Then there was the time she called my boss and told him I needed a midday nap because I was too tired. I was 22. Story 17. One time I went to the mall with my friends, which was very rare because I didn't often get to have friends. Obviously, to get there, my parents had to drop me off. But then, an hour into our hangout session, which consisted of walking around the mall and me telling her jokes, it was fun, my mom texted me and asked where I was. I texted her back and told her I was at the mall where she dropped me off. She accused me of leaving and demanded I take a picture of where I am to prove I'm still there. Reluctantly, I did, confiding in my date about my narcissistic mother for the first time to anyone. Telling someone about it felt good. until 5 minutes later, she used the picture I sent to her to find where I was and approached me. This is when I discovered she never actually went home and was following me around the mall the whole time, watching what I was doing. She told me we had to leave right now because she was worried I'd run away and grabbed me by my arm to take me away, leaving my date there. This isn't the only time she embarrassed me. Among others, she called a good friend of mine's parents to tell them he was doing drugs. He wasn't, so I wouldn't ask to go over to see him. Story 18. I never had any friends until I was in high school. My first sleepover was at 13. I always had to leave early for my high school graduation and all of my birthday parties. My mom only allowed me to be out for 1 or 2 hours, and she would text me every 10 minutes to check in. I had to ask for permission to leave the house, even just to take the dog out. My cell phone was given to my parents at 10 o'clock every night, and I had to give them my passwords for every website I visited. I suffered from depression, anxiety, and nervous breakdowns on a daily basis. My first date with my boyfriend, when I was 20, was only allowed to last for half an hour. My mom had to be there the whole time. I finally moved out a few months ago, but I still get texts from my mom every hour on the hour. And I still have anxiety and trouble having fun and making friends. Story 19. My buddy had the worst helicopter mom. We went to college 3 hours away from his hometown and ended up at a random after-bar party with people we had just met that night. His mom showed up. We had no idea how she found us. Walked in, grabbed him by the ear, and dragged him out to her car. She then proceeded to drive him back to our hometown. The next day, she made him get a ride back to college with his former high school sweetheart, whom he had recently broken up with. She did all of this because she didn't approve of the breakup.
What's your worst story from the throw him in the pool, he'll learn how to swim parenting style? When I was a kid, I had never gone camping, not even once, until I was a teenager. I always wanted to go, especially with my cousin who was at the same age as me at the time. Finally, my parents said we could go, and took us to a place in the woods. They gave us a tent to sleep in, but it was our first time setting it up. They also gave us food like chips that were already half eaten and some sausages. And my little sister came with us. She was only a kid at the time and didn't know much about camping either. After they dropped us off, my parents left us there all by ourselves. We had to figure out how to put up the tent, make a little camp, and take care of my sister. It was hard because we didn't know what we were doing. We were scared and missed our parents a lot. The food wasn't enough and we didn't have many supplies. We had to make do with what we had. The whole weekend, we were worried about wild animals or getting lost. We stayed close to our tent and tried to keep each other safe. It wasn't the fun adventure I thought it would be. After that, I never wanted to go camping again. It was too scary and not what I expected. My parents and my uncles said it was okay because they learned to camp the same way when they were young. They thought it was a good lesson for us. I'm just glad that nothing really bad happened to us out there in the woods. We were lucky to be safe and sound when my parents came back to pick us up. I sort of get what they were trying to do, but it just is very stupid, to be honest. Story 2. When I was a kid, I got into a really bad motorcycle accident while we were out in the desert. I was only a teenager and I hurt my leg really badly. Even though I was in a lot of pain, my dad didn't want to stop our trip early. He told me not to look at my leg and tried to get me to walk, but it hurt so much that I would pass out every time I moved. My brother saw how much I was hurting and told my dad we needed to go home. My dad finally listened, but he had been drinking and couldn't drive, so he let my brother drive us out of the desert. My brother was really nervous and kept hitting bumps, which made me pass out over and over. When we finally got home, my dad thought I should just sleep it off and go to the hospital later. But the next day, when we went to the hospital, my dad got in trouble with the people who take care of kids because of how he handled my accident. It was a really tough time, but I'm glad I got the help I needed eventually. Story 3. When I was a teenager, my dad thought it would be a good idea to teach me how to drive. He took me to a parking lot near our house, where I spent some time getting used to the car's steering wheel and pedals. I drove around for about 15 minutes, trying to get the hang of it, but my dad wasn't very patient. He thought I wasn't learning fast enough, so he decided to take things up a notch. He told me we were going to drive on the real road, thinking that a more difficult situation would help me learn better. As we drove, he started yelling out commands, telling me to go faster, slower, or to stop suddenly. He got more and more frustrated, and I was so scared I might bump into someone. Things got even more intense when we realized we were running out of gas. My dad told me to pull into a gas station. Now, keep in mind I had only been driving for about 25 minutes and had no idea how to park properly. I tried to pull up to the gas pump, but I ended up coming in at a strange angle, not straight at all. My dad was not happy. He grabbed the steering wheel to help me and he shouted, "Don't you know how to drive?" I was upset and told him, "No, I don't know how to drive. You're the one teaching me." After that, my dad drove us home without saying a word. It was clear that his driving lessons weren't going well, so I decided to enroll in a driving school to learn from professionals instead. That's how I ended up getting my driver's license, with a little less drama and a lot more safety. Oh man, don't even get me started on how my dad taught me how to drive. Lots of yelling. Story 4. One time I was stung by a bee, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. I tried to tell my mother about it, but she didn't believe me at first. She thought I might be making it up for attention or something. But then things got serious because I started to have a hard time breathing. That's when my mother realized I wasn't joking around. She got worried and decided we needed to go to the hospital, but she made me walk there while pushing my baby brother's stroller. It wasn't easy, but we managed to get there. When we arrived at the hospital, the nurses and doctors were really surprised to see how bad my reaction was. They hurried me into a room and gave me epinephrine, which is a special medicine for allergic reactions. I was lucky because the medicine worked. I started feeling better. Fast forward to many months later, a bee somehow found its way into my bedroom. I was scared because I knew how dangerous bees could be for me. So I went to get my father to help me deal with a bee, but instead of understanding, he called me a scaredy cat and told me I needed to learn how to handle these things on my own. He said, "You can't always run from bees. You have to learn how to deal with them sometime." But I thought to myself, why should I risk getting stung again and ending up in the hospital when I could just ask someone who isn't allergic to bees to help me out? It seemed like a much safer and smarter choice to me. Story 5. I was spending a day at the zoo, helping out with an event for families with young children. It was supposed to be a fun and educational experience. But I saw some things that really surprised me. The zoo had a few peafowl that were allowed to roam around freely. They were quite a sight with their colorful feathers. However, not all the parents were very careful with their children around these birds. I saw a few instances where a young child, usually a toddler who was just learning to walk, would spot a peafowl and get excited. "Wow, pretty bird," they would say, taking a few wobbly steps towards the peafowl, wanting to get a closer look. But peafowl can be quite territorial and not very friendly to strangers, especially little ones who might seem like a threat to them. So instead of a gentle encounter, the peafowl would often chase after the child or even try to harm them. It was really upsetting to watch. The worst part was how some of the parents reacted. Instead of comforting their child or explaining why we need to be careful around animals, they would just say, "You should have known better." But how could the child know? They're so young, it's not like they've learned about animal behavior yet. It's the parents' job to teach them these things, to keep them safe and explain the world to them. But some of these parents didn't seem to understand that. There was even one mom who took things too far. She was actually encouraging her kids to bother a llama, hoping that it would react to them. It was like she was treating it as a game or a joke, but it's not very nice to the animal or to the children. We had to ask her to leave the zoo because her behavior was inappropriate and could have led to someone getting hurt. Story 6. When I was a little kid, I got really sick with the flu. It was terrible. I had a fever, I was retching, sweating a lot, and my nose was all stuffed up. It was one of those times when you just feel awful all over. My dad went to the pharmacy to get some medicine to help me feel better, but there was a big mistake. The people at the pharmacy thought he was getting the medicine for himself, so they gave him pills made for adults. These weren't just any pills, though. They were huge, like the kind you give to a horse. Normally, when kids are sick, they get medicine that tastes okay and is easy to take, like syrups or little chewable tablets. But these giant pills were definitely not made for a kid my age. My dad brought them home and told me I had to take them to get better. I tried my best to intake those pills, but they were just too big for me. I gagged a few times, which made me really scared. My dad got upset because I was having such a hard time when he started trying to push the pills. His hands were shaking, and I could tell he was getting angry. I was crying and could barely breathe because my nose was so stuffed up. I remember feeling his wedding ring hit my teeth. I was looking at my mom with tears in my eyes, hoping she would help me. It was a really scary and upsetting moment for me. After a lot of struggling, I finally cuffed the pill back up. My throat was on fire and I was still crying. My mom was really upset with my dad and told him he needed to apologize for being so rough with me. My dad just said that I would have to learn to take big pills like that eventually, and then he walked away. Still upset. Damn. Reminds me of my own father. Well, if you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 7. When I was growing up, my mom had a way of teaching us things that she called the sink or swim method. It was her way of saying that we would learn best by being thrown into a situation and having to figure it out on our own. This method became very clear to me one summer when my family moved to a house with a pool. It was a summer between my first and second grade years. My mom was really set on the idea that I had learned to swim when I was just a baby. Because of this, she brought some floaties for my younger sister, but she didn't get any for me. She said I was too big for floaties and that I should already know how to swim. I was nervous about the pool, especially the deep parts where I couldn't touch the bottom. I didn't want to go in any area where I couldn't walk. But my mom had other plans. She called me over to the pool and before I knew it, she grabbed me and threw me into the deep end, which was about 6 feet deep. The moment I hit the water, it was obvious to everyone, including me, that I had no idea how to swim. I started splashing around wildly, trying to stay afloat. My mom yelled at me from the side of the pool to stop panicking, but it was easier said than done. I went under the water a couple of times, and each time I came up, I was coughing and gasping for air. I screamed for help, but my mom just kept telling me to swim to the edge of the pool. I finally managed to reach the edge, but I was too weak to pull myself out. My mom, instead of helping me out, yelled at me to swim to the shallow end of the pool. Every time I tried to grab onto the edge to rest or pull myself along, my mom would take my fingers off the edge and tell me to stop messing around and just swim. I felt like it took forever, but I eventually made it to the shallow end of the pool. As soon as I was in water where I could touch the bottom, my mom and the rest of the family said, "See, you still remember how to swim. Never really forget." It was a tough way to learn, but in the end, they were right. I did learn how to swim that day, and I never forgot how to do it after that. Story 8. When I was a kid, my parents had a strange way of trying to teach me things. They wouldn't really explain or take the time to show me how to do something properly. Instead, they would demonstrate something really quickly, expecting me to understand everything from just watching them do it once. If I didn't get it right away, they would get angry and sometimes even hurt me. One time they tried to teach me how to tie my shoes. They showed me how to do it so fast that I couldn't even see what they were doing. Then they told me to tie my shoes by myself. I was really confused and didn't know how to do it, so they started yelling at me, saying I was too stupid to wear shoes. It wasn't until I was a teenager that I finally learned how to tie my shoes the right way. I had to teach myself, and I used the bunny ears method to do it. It was really sad because people used to make fun of me for not knowing how to tie my shoes, and I couldn't tell them why I didn't know because they would have thought I was just making excuses. In the place where I live, we buy milk in bags, and we use a special pitcher to hold the bags. You usually tie an elastic band around the corner of the bag that you opened. One summer, I woke up early in the morning because my brother was at summer school and I had the whole morning to myself. I decided to make a bowl of cereal for breakfast, and after I was done eating, I needed to put the milk back in the fridge. My mom tried to show me how to tie the elastic band around the milk bag. I did what I thought was right, but she said it was wrong. She told me to do it again. For the whole morning, she kept telling me I was doing it wrong and kept hurting me. By the time I was finally able to eat my cereal, it was already noon, and my brother had come home from summer school. I don't think I was doing it wrong because I've been doing it the same way ever since. I think my mom just wanted an excuse to hurt me. I'm really sorry about that, man. Yup, there are a million ways to do one thing. Your mom was just being a B-word. Story 9. My older brother was on the hunt for a house. He wanted to find a bargain in a semi-rural area with a bit of land around it. His budget was quite small for what he wanted, so he was looking at houses that were, well, let's just say they'd seen better days. He found one that he thought was perfect. It had lots of rooms, a basement, a couple of acres of woods, and it wasn't too far from the city, about 15 to 30 minutes away. The price tag was around $120,000, and he was ready to snap it up. But oh boy, was this house a fixer-upper. It had more problems than a math textbook. I tried to talk some sense into him, but our parents were all for it. They went to check out the house, took pictures, helped with the loan paperwork, and even started dreaming up all the projects they tackled to make it livable. My brother was all in, ready to sign on the dotted line and move in. I was worried sick. This house was a relic from the early 1910s and had only been touched up once in the 1950s. It was like something out of a horror movie, with molds up the walls, holes in the roof, and walls you could see daylight through, wiring that looked like it belonged in a museum. Not in a good way. Wallpaper peeling off like it was trying to escape, and shelves that were crumbling to dust. The only bright spot was the size of the rooms, which are pretty spacious. I begged and pleaded with my brother to reconsider. After a while, he started to see the light. They backed out of the deal, and later, when I brought up how awful that house was, our parents actually agreed with me. They thought it was a dump too, but they had wanted him to go through with it because they thought it would be a good learning experience. I was flabbergasted. I asked them why they would support such a risky move, and they said it was to teach him to be more careful with big decisions. They were willing to let him dive into a sea of debt and hardship just to learn a lesson. They pushed him towards it instead of sitting down and having a heart-to-heart about why it was a bad idea. It was a tough pill to swallow, realizing that sometimes the people we look up to can lead us down a rocky path with the best intentions. Story 10. When I was a kid, my dad had this idea to teach me how to sail. I wasn't too keen on the ocean. It scared me a bit. But I really wanted to spend some quality time with my dad, so I went along with it. We had a sailboat and I climbed aboard, waiting for my dad to join me. The sun was shining and everything seemed fine. But then, out of nowhere, I noticed the boat was slowly moving away from the land. I looked around, confused, and that's when I saw my dad on the shore, untying the ropes and giving the boat a little push into the sea. Panic started to bubble up inside me. I was all alone in this boat, and I didn't know the first thing about sailing. The water around me seemed huge and scary, and I didn't know how to get back to safety. I tried to call out to my dad, but he just waved at me like everything was part of some big plan. The minutes turned into hours, and the sun began to set. The sky changed from bright blue to a deep orange and then to a dark purple. I was out there, all by myself, with nothing but the sound of the waves and the occasional seagull to keep me company. I felt so small and lost in the vastness of the ocean. Finally, after what felt like forever, I managed to steer the boat back towards the shore. It was more by luck than skill, I think. The stars were out and the moon was casting a silvery glow in the water by the time I stumbled back onto land. I was relieved to be back, but my heart felt heavy. I'd imagined a day of laughter and learning with my dad, but instead, I got a lesson in fear and disappointment. It wasn't the adventure I'd signed up for, and it certainly wasn't the bonding experience I'd hoped for. That day in the sailboat taught me a lot, but not in the way my dad intended. It was a hard lesson, but one I'd never forget. Story 11. When I was young, my parents decided that they didn't want to wake up early in the morning to give me money for lunch. They believed that since they never received an allowance as children, I shouldn't get money without earning it either. They thought the need for lunch money was trivial, assuming that the school would provide meals regardless of my financial situation. However, the reality was quite different. The school had a strict policy, and if I couldn't pay the $2 for lunch each day, my tray would be taken away, leaving me hungry. This was a difficult lesson for a young child to learn. As a result, at a young age, I became quite adept at finding money where I could. I would sometimes take it from my dad's wallet or my stepmother's purse, feeling that I had no other choice. It was a secret I kept as I was desperate to avoid the hunger and embarrassment of having my lunch taken away. My sisters, on the other hand, seemed to have no trouble getting their lunch money. They were provided for, while I struggled. This disparity made me feel isolated and left out, as if I was the only one facing these challenges. Unfortunately, my secret didn't stay hidden for long. I was eventually caught taking money, and from that moment on, I was labeled a thief. This label stuck with me, and anytime something went missing in the house, the first place everyone looked was my room. My belongings would be searched through, and privacy became a luxury I couldn't afford. The experience of being labeled a thief was a heavy burden for a young child to carry. It felt like a stain on my character that couldn't be washed away. What is the most toxic thing a parent can say to a child? Mine said I'm hard to love, as well as, we only love you because we're your family. No one will ever love you unlike us. Mother would actually get regularly paranoid and hurt me starting from a young age into adulthood onwards for wanting to leave the family. She had no proof. She would legitimately say God told her what's in my mind and heart and go crazy. Dad was also extremely harming, plus had a sadistic streak. Wish it wasn't true, but he did a lot of painful things and gleefully announced it's enjoyable. One time, he hurt me with a rattan cane. I didn't do anything. His reason was, I want to test the cane. They also tried hard to ensure I couldn't make any friends, and like my brothers, while taunting me that I have no friends to help me if they kick me out, so I would be too afraid to leave. I left eventually as an adult. I needed a lot of therapy, without them knowing, to build the courage and caring friends. I basically used my job as a means to get therapy, and I was also fortunate to have an HR person help me get time off during the workday for therapy appointments. I worked late to compensate. The day I left, I was told I should have been harmed way more as a child, that I'd better get it into my thick skull. It's my dad's right to harm me and that the police wouldn't do anything. Doing so much better being out of their life and no contact. Sure, I have severe complex PTSD, but I'm not being mistreated anymore. I'm glad he worked hard to get away from them. He did incredibly well despite all the things that were thrown at him. Story 2. Okay, this one hits home quite hard. When we were kids, my younger brother and I were playing knights in the garden and throwing spears at a blanket with a cross on it. At one moment, I threw my spear, not knowing he stood behind the blanket. He survived, and the rest of the day is a blur. I remember my parents yelling at me, and standing at the corner waiting for the ambulance to come while crying for what seemed like a million years. Everyone is ignoring me. Then hospitals, and guilt. So much guilt. I was only a kid. The nurses giving me the evil eye. The hardest part was still to come. My brother went blind in one eye, but was unharmed otherwise, except perhaps mentally. We never spoke about it. And after about a year, he had to go to a doc for a prosthetic eye. My mom said, "You're coming with us." I remember very vividly sitting in the waiting room, hearing him cry, "It hurts, it hurts, it hurts." And when they came back, after what seemed an eternity, she looked at me and said, "Now you know what you've done." We never spoke about it. She went to have a drinking problem. I also had a drinking problem 10 years later. I get nightmares every few weeks. Nobody knows. I'm 47 now and still struggle. I forgave her. I never forgave myself. Oh well, 40 more years to go, and if I keep drinking like this, I might knock down a decade or two. Story 3. I was a teenager at the time. I was in the passenger seat as my dad drove to McDonald's to get dinner for me, him, and my mom. I'm an only child. I've been overweight or obese my entire life, and I would have been around 260 to 270 pounds at the time. I asked for a Big Mac combo and a 10-piece nugget. I like variety. He turned to me and frustratedly said, "Why do you always have to be such a pig?" He apologized profusely a few minutes later, but it's always stuck with me, sometimes playing on a loop in my head. It's made worse by the fact that out of my parents, he's usually the sane and nice one. My mom is completely insane, and I'm used to that. Him saying something like that kind of broke me, and even though we're fairly close, it's never left my mind. My mother once broke down crying when I was a kid. When I asked her what was wrong, she went on a rant about how if she could go back, she wouldn't have been with my dad, she wouldn't have had me, etc. That messed me up for years. When I brought it up in an argument, she then accused me of lying and said that I was always trying to make her the bad guy. Story 4. Your dad only ever wanted 3 kids. I'm the 4th child. They split after I was born. Then he remarried and had 3 kids and was told, "See, now he has his perfect 3 kids." My stepmom had several miscarriages, and Dad didn't tell us she was pregnant due to the fact they were worried about having another miscarriage. He only told us when she had Bub. Dad lives in a different city. Was told many times by my mother, he doesn't even care about you anymore. He wouldn't even tell you she was pregnant. Why would he want you anymore? He has new kids now. Knowing full well what has happened and why Dad didn't want to tell us. Claims to be a feminist but is very much far from one. Also claims to be an advocate for mistreatment. Told her I was scared of an ex-boyfriend and she told me to tough it out because she needed her bathroom redone. He's a plumber. Yells or screams and throws stuff at my stepdad and puts him down constantly. Told her my boss, at the time, came in intoxicated and tried to do something and she didn't want anything to do with it. She could tell you all the info about females' mistreatment but couldn't give a care about the male's info. To her, that was just stupid and no one cares about them. Told me every chance she could to marry a rich fella and stay skinny and then take him for everything I could. She would also tell people that were having trouble getting pregnant that I would carry the child for them and that I would just tough it out and do it for the money. I was still a teenager, and she was setting up people to contact me to be a surrogate. Money means everything to her. I'm the youngest and skinniest. I was just a thing that men would like me better, and that means dating a different tradesman so she can get a free house renovation, and all I would have to do is sleep with them until she needed a different tradesman. I did not do this. After I dated the plumber, I wasn't going to let her use me to get her free stuff, or somehow make money from my body, be a surrogate to her friends. She has really messed up my life, and I will not let her in my life or my children's. She continues to cry as a victim, but as a manipulator. And I met my partner or father to my children. I would say sorry for every little thing that went wrong and continue to let my family walk all over me, until he stood up for me and taught me self-love and don't do anything you're not happy with. I'm glad you found self-love. There isn't enough these days. Story 5. My father has extreme PTSD from Vietnam. He was heavily medicated for all of the above, but there was no medication management going on, so it was a mess. And in retrospect, I understand and feel terrible that he went through that. Most of my childhood was hard with him after a certain point. He was prescribed OxyContin for pain in his knees, which he had just broken at work. This might have been the tipping point. He told me, "You're probably not my son. I didn't want you. You look nothing like me, and your mother would tuck anything on 2 wheels." This was followed by literally dragging me while I cried to take a paternity test, which he was very nasty about. But my mother explained that he had severe serious conditions that were hereditary. That was his way of making sure I wouldn't be sick in the future. Turns out he's my dad and I have a future of disease to look forward to. Another time he had a complete unprovoked meltdown while sitting in his truck with me in our driveway. He said, "I hate my life. I'm going to lock myself in my bedroom and end myself." He stole his weapon and threw it into a quarry along with other weapons. I hope someday you have a child that you hate as much as I hate you. And lastly, upon finding out that he had an extremely rare condition, he said, "I'm going to end soon. You need to learn to be a man and not deal with it the way you deal with everything else." I didn't talk to him for years after this. I'm sure there were 100 more miserable things said, but those were the shining stars. I confronted him one day and could tell he was calm and in the mental state where talking wasn't out of the question. His anger wasn't an escalating thing, or something you could really provoke. It just happened, like an explosion. So I chose a calm moment and asked him why he said these things. You could 100% see in his face that he was almost in disbelief. He sobbed. Mind you, this is my Vietnam vet, strangling another karate dad in front of a crowd for making a snotty comment about me, flipping the principal's desk for suspending me over defending myself from kids, rather a scary man, sobbing, begging for my forgiveness and telling me he didn't mean or believe anything he said to me. After that, he went to a doctor and they administered his medicine. He was still a weirdo, but he never said anything to me again. I'm about to be 35 in a month. This all happened when I was a teenager. It's not something we have spoken about since that day. In my adult life, he's been my number one supporter. He's always supported my weirdo art, noise, filmmaking. He treats my children like they're his entire world. He told me that my son gave him a new meaning in life. He's always there when I'm in a pinch. He's just a good person. My takeaway from this was that being on top of your mental health and medication management are so important. I learned from the experience, albeit at the cost of my sanity, I'm sure. But when I found out that we were going to have our first child, I went and got myself on the track to taking care of my own mental health problems. I would never want to hurt my son's feelings, or daughter now, as of a week ago. And I'm grateful that my father got beyond that point in his life and was able to move forward and become the person he really is beneath a shell that had formed. He's my best friend, and I miss their best friendship. Unless your parent is inherently evil, give them as many chances as they need to be your parent, to whatever extent they're capable. Story 6. I love my mother to pieces and felt like the most loved child ever. So I laughed my head off when she told me this, but I knew it could be hurtful to many people in a less loving situation. I was the product of an affair and have a good relationship with both my dads. Though I've always been a mummy's boy, even now as a middle-aged man. But I've always known that. My mother didn't realize she was pregnant with me until she was very far along, despite already having experienced it when she had my sister 8 years before. When she finally discovered it, she tried to get a cancellation, but she was too far along. There's a 24-week limit in the UK. I was fuming when they wouldn't let me cancel you, she said in front of my partner. A lot of people might take this personally and feel attacked, but I knew she was talking about the situation she was in at the time. Personally, I have a dark sense of humor, so the sting of knowing my mother wanted to cancel me and her telling me after decades of showing so much love hit my funny bone and sent me off. My partner was mortified. Story 7. I'm the youngest of 3. My siblings are 6 and 7 years older than me. My parents always talked about how they didn't plan for kids, didn't think my mom could have any, and then had 2 back-to-back. They couldn't afford 2 kids, so when I came along a lot later, then they were really broke. Most of my childhood memories involve my parents saying to me, "Man, we really couldn't afford anything after you came along. Life got so much harder, but we love you." I get they didn't mean any harm, but always having to hear about how much of a hardship and a burden it was to love and care for me really messed me up. I'm in therapy and I've been for years and I'm okay. I'm in a great place and I love myself. But a part of me always feels bad when people say they love me because, to me, love implies a burden and I don't want to be a burden to anyone. Story 8. I heard the most soul-crushing thing I can imagine from my parents. I won't be participating in this thread. I don't want to give any people ideas or put that pain out into the world. I have 2 children of my own now, and I'm acutely aware that things said, even in passing, I may not remember a week or month from now, could haunt them from decades like it did to me. So instead, I give them well-earned praise generously and freely. I love them as unconditionally as I can manage, and I think about whether small things are worth big fights before taking the bait. I do all this while also being somewhat strict and consistent in enforcement and punishment when well-established rules are broken. I'm trying my best to overcome my past and hope I'm bringing 2 brighter lights into this world lit from my single candle. Have a blessed weekend. Hope all of you who have been hurt by this kind of pain can unburden that weight and feel worthy of living a good life. Cheers. Story 9. My parents required pretty strict obedience. I tended to push back a lot, but I feel like the "because I said so" demand to respect their authority without question messed me up. Though I'm smart and capable, I often ask questions to confirm answers I'm fairly sure are right. I have trouble pushing back against authority when I know I'm being taken advantage of. I tend to take people at their word too much, which I figure is better to trust than always be suspicious, but I do get taken from time to time. I stay under bad managers longer than I should. I lashed out and broke my kid's dresser once. We were using a naughty chair method. I realized I was out of line and put myself in a naughty chair for my kid's sake. I told my dad and he thought that was ridiculous. The parent is always right. I think that's when I realized I'm not always right. I'm a pretty good parent, but I get distracted, get tired, get caught up in my head and aren't engaged fully when I should be. Because of that, I make mistakes. So I let my kids push back at times. They need to be able to stand up for themselves when they think they're right. My oldest will tell me when I'm off the handle about something. I don't like it at the moment, but I can tell he's right. Our competitive culture and lifestyles of all of us being coerced into doing stuff for other people, be it working or buying, etc. I want my kids to be able to resist that and know how to stand up for themselves. Story 10. My mom is always making comments about my size and how disgusting they are. I developed very young, probably a D in the 6th grade easily. She never helped me to find proper fitting clothing. It took me until I was 24 to find something that actually worked. When I was in 8th grade, probably having double D's, we were going through the airport. Hey, look, that girl has ones as big as yours, only she's not as fat. I weighed 120 pounds, still have major body image issues. She constantly put herself down, which, of course, made me feel the same about myself. I'm too stupid to do anything right. I'm too fat. I'm too worthless. That's constantly a fight to not think to myself to this day. 35 years old. My self-esteem being so low, I didn't try very hard in school. Rubbed my face and how lazy I was. I would cry constantly and was just never comforted or asked what was wrong. I even remember hearing her telling my stepdad that she's just a psycho-depresso. I called her out on it. She still denies ever saying that. Kids were nasty to me in school. Apparently, some of the stuff I told her and what they would do or say to her made her cry. But I don't ever remember her comforting me. I blocked out so much of school. Teachers never did anything, nor my parents. My sister would do similar things to me. Everyone at school, my mom, sister, and brother would always call me Chinese, and I absolutely hated it. I was born with a lazy eye and had corrective surgery that made them more almond-shaped. But they don't really look Asian. Yet everyone said that. Super non-diverse area, by the way. Almost no other ethnicity except natives in the state. I would break down when constantly picked on about it. Naturally, I would be bitter and angry about so much of this. And I was constantly a witch. People didn't like me because of my attitude. My stepdad hates me and would put me down, complaining to my mom how I would never talk to him. Then she would tell me about it. Rarely stood up for me. Did, a few times though. When my parents split, I immediately chose to live with my dad. I'm actually super lucky because my parents always and still do have a good relationship with each other. It wasn't in any way a messy divorce. I chose him for a chance to restart at a different school. I adore my dad and look up to him so much. His flaws are that he's a procrastinator. He likes to avoid conflicts as well. I never thought of how much he avoids conflict. It was to an unhealthy degree, in my opinion. One time our neighbors were hurting our dogs because they were barking at their horse, at the horse's feet and scaring it and being fairly aggressive but not biting it. Something told me don't go in the field to get them, so I stood at the fence yelling at them, which never works, so neighbors started going at them, then turned and took one at me. It was extremely intentional because it had to be a 30-yard difference to a hard right, so not like I was in front or behind them. The projectile hit maybe 2 feet from my feet in front of me. I went home and told my dad and showed him my code. He said, if he would have hit you, I would have gone over there and hurt him. But he never called the cops or even so much and went and had a talk with him. My dad also didn't come for me when I was upset, which was often. I was in a mistreating relationship. I tried to leave him, but when I was packing, he threw my snake on the bed and pulled out a weapon to end him if I left. Neither of my parents did anything to help me get out of there. The guy would randomly threaten to end himself and pull the weapon out from time to time. I was stuck in that relationship for 4 years but got out eventually, under my own strength and willpower. I was hospitalized for 4 days due to a poisonous snake bite. Now my pet snakes, of course. They told my mom I lost 15 pounds because of the bite, and if I passed away, she would have gotten a lot of money for my life insurance. She told me I should go roll in a pit of snakes then. Also told me I shouldn't have been born, then laughed. It was actually a joke, but it still hurt. Of course, this is all just some of it. There are plenty of other actions that happened too. Both my parents are actually very caring and I love them, but these are things that still bother me greatly to this day. I limit my interaction with my mom because she's a pretty negative person. I live 2,000 miles from them and rarely go home, partly due to it being expensive to get there. I've always been fiercely independent and didn't want to rely on them, trying to make them proud, but it also worked out to get away. I would say the worst thing that was ever said to me was nothing. I know this was long, I apologize. If you actually finished reading this, I thank you. Story 11. I never wanted kids. I never wanted you. Your mom should have aborted you. Said by my father at a friend's house. He was intoxicated. I was crying so much that his friends had to calm me down. They assured me that I was wanted and loved. I'm an only child. Want to know why? My father forced my mom to have 3 cancellations. She actually had 4, but that was a tubular pregnancy that would have ended her if the doctor didn't remove it. She had a cancellation in the late 70s. She waited too long, but still had the cancellation. It was twins. I was born in the early 80s. My father badgered her every day to cancel me. He threw things at her and told her to get a cancellation ASAP. She told him to get off and she was going to have me. She got pregnant again in 1995 and 1996. He forced her to have cancellation for those 2 babies also. He drove her to Planned Parenthood for both cancellation. I had to take care of her when she got home. Last year, my parents got into an argument. He told her that he didn't know why you had that kid. Still think about my brothers and sisters that were canceled. What could have been? I'm a 37-year-old female that has never been pregnant. I wonder if I will ever have kids. Just hang in there. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 12. I'm 27, but I've had many things said to me over the last 15 to 20 years by my mom and occasionally a family member. Here's one that was said last September. You're a schmuck. You've got to lose weight. You've got to shave. You've got to get a job. You're useless. You're a waste of space. You're lazy. No one wants to be your friend. You have no friends. No one in the family likes you. No one likes you. You're antisocial or unsocial. Your plans for the year were never going to happen. You're going nowhere in life. You don't help around the house. You have no ambitions in life. You're a failure. You're stupid. You don't use your brain. You have a vacant stare. Your brain is fried from a lifetime use of technology. You have no rationality. You have no concept of what is and isn't real. You don't exist in the real world. You're a poor excuse of a human being. You're a poor excuse of a man. You're a failure. You'll never amount to anything. You're a failure. There have been worse things said to me. I remember a majority of them, but try to forget them. There are days when the depressive thoughts flood back in and cause the toxic and harmful things said by family members to hit me like a tidal wave. I'm honestly surprised that I'm still alive. I've been suffering for so long. I don't even know how to feel normal anymore. All I know is how to hide my depression and put on a mask, to make it appear that I'm fine and everything is all right. That's how I've been living for at least the last 10 years. Story 13. There's always trouble when you're home. Me working 2 jobs all the while trying to finish school, always trying to drive a wedge between me and my siblings for years with their dumb new boyfriend. Oh, did I mention I was trying to get good grades, which meant studying between jobs? Oh, here he goes, hiding in his room all afternoon. Nicknamed Cave Name by my mother and boyfriend to make fun and degrade me in front of my siblings. Can't you just leave to your fathers finally? Ripped up all the pictures of me that existed to that day to spread them all over my bed. Drew devil horns and the only picture I had of my father. Great times. By the way, I finished college at the top of my class, so all the mistreatment over the years just fueled my desire to get the hell out of my old life. Story 14. My parents used to tell me in so many words that being myself wasn't good enough and that people wouldn't like me unless I completely changed who I was. There was something inherently unlikable about me and I had to pretend to be someone else to get anywhere in life. That really messed me up for life. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I went from a quirky kid with lots of ambitions to an adult with negative self-esteem and no personality. I'll never recover from it. They did thousands of tiny things to cut me down over the years. Things I don't think they even realized they were doing, but nevertheless made me believe more and more strongly that I was just not good. From telling me I wasn't normal and that they wouldn't acknowledge my unique needs because I needed to learn how to deal with normal people, to telling me that I had a hard time making friends because I didn't have blonde hair, to saying people must be intimidated by me and that's why they didn't like me, to telling me I was bragging every time I was proud of anything I did, to telling me as a teenager I was being selfish and trying to forbid me from even saying the word I. I still remember hundreds of the things they did and said to me that just made me think, wow, I'm doing everything wrong. I will acknowledge that I hold a lot of the responsibility for letting it affect me so much, and I haven't properly dealt with its repercussions. I should have dealt with my issues in a constructive manner instead of a destructive way, which made me continually spiral until I couldn't get back any shred of dignity. I believed for a long time that I'm just a bad person and there's nothing I can do about it. And even though a part of me knows that I can control my destiny and my actions, a much larger part of myself believes so strongly that I'm a bad person that it's overtaken my entire narrative. Please consider joining a support group for people who had mistreating parents. Support groups can sometimes be better than doctors. Story 15. Acting angry about low grades and excessively praising perfect grades. E.g., this is how all your grades should be. And obsessing over unfinished assignments, even those that are meant to take weeks, or constantly reminding the child they have homework until they're sick of hearing about assignments. Demotivation 101. Criticism of appearance or weight. This is almost never the child's fault. It's also a common cause of, and at the very least, horrible eating habits. My metabolism is absolutely messed up from this, and I rarely eat around my family anymore. Badgering them about behaviors from several years ago. You were so stubborn and mean after X activity. There's such a thing as brain development. Actively attempting to stop them from performing harmless hobbies that the parent isn't interested in. Why don't you do real art instead of these mythical creatures? Finally, art that actually looks good. I wish the art teacher would assign more of these. Bonus points if they throw religion into it or get angry when they don't show personal projects to them because you'll just get scolded. Comparing them to other people. X person takes care of all their responsibilities and has time for good grades. Each person is under a different scenario and has their own struggles. Breaking boundaries to show power. You don't like to be handled or your shoulders or your neck being touched? Pointedly grab shoulders. You're not royalty. We're a family and you're going to receive physical contact. Do you hate parental affection or something? Interrogation. What happened at school today? Tell me subject by subject, or where does X friend live? What is their current family status? Lack of regard for personal space, reading diaries, scouring social media accounts, tracking. This is how you raise a compulsive liar who doesn't trust the parent. I have friends whose existence I won't tell my parents. I actively keep up a guise of only posting about fandoms to make them think that's all I care about. Then there's the obvious ones like gaslighting, emotional manipulation, etc. Story 16. Holy, you guys have very overly toxic parents. I'm so sorry to every one of you. It makes me feel incredibly lucky to have the mom I have, who's always been open to doing better, once I knew how to explain what I needed from her. But as a kid, she was never around. I was the oldest and had to take care of my younger siblings. What impacts me the most is she would be gone for hours and hours, into the late night or sometimes not even being home before we had to go to school. She never told us when she would be back, so I remember sitting staring at the window, wondering why I wasn't good enough for my mom to stay home with us, and if she was never coming back this time. And just being stressed and scared and also having younger siblings that never listened to me because why would they? I'm not mom. We were very emotionally neglected. My mom didn't know how to interact with us, was on drugs a lot, and would lock herself in her room or the shed. Again, I'd wonder why she didn't want to spend time with us. Maybe I wasn't good enough and I have to try harder to be good. It is why I had zero self-worth for a long time. I'm having kids of my own now, so I've been working through my issues. I'm determined not to let my issues impact my kids. They will never have to feel like they're not good enough for my love. And I'm working through all my other issues so that they can have happy, healthy childhoods, not burdened by my emotions, but instead feeling welcome to come to me about anything, to know I love them, to feel confident to always be there no matter what. All kinds of stuff kids need from parents and as little baggage as possible. Our family's issues go back generations, and I'm determined to be the one to break that cycle, no matter how hard it might be. I love my kids too much to continue these issues. Story 17. I'm a dad of 2 kids, and this thread is so depressing to read. I feel awful for all the horrible things so many people have had to go through. All your pain just hurts my soul. But also, I know as a dad I've made so many mistakes with my kids. Raising a daughter every day for 10 years isn't easy. There's a lot of room for a lot of mistakes in there. Add another 8 years for child number 2. I love them both so much, but do you think I haven't done something so wrong and not even realized it in the cumulative 18 years of child rearing? I sure have, and it nags at me. I wonder, how have I already royally screwed up or emotionally hurt my children and not even known it? What I have done for them will be the memory, or they'll be saying to a friend one day. One time, my dad said, parenting is so hard. There's no book or whatever. It's easy to say, just be decent or don't have kids then, and all that. But humans have babies. It's a thing we do sometimes, and humans also have bad days and get tired and run out of battery. I've run out. I've raised my voice to my kids. I've said dumb things. I've been childish when I should have been the adult in the room. No excuses, but look, I've been home with both kids for the last 400 days, trying to help them lead normal lives, stay fed and safe, stay on track with virtual school, but off-screens will also engage their minds and emotional needs while being fun dad, and present and listen to songs they sing and watch magic tricks and make food they like and make sure they have clean clothes and play video games, but also limited and read and camp and take walks and buy a puppy and swim, play tag, bicycle and get them to bed on time. 400 days, no break, not leaving for work, not a night out to unwind. My son tells me I'm mean. My daughter tells me the book I'm working on is probably really bad. For example, this morning my wife made blueberry muffins. Sweet. Around noon I realized my 8-year-old has picked off the crusty muffin tops of all of them. My wife gets angry because they are now ruined. She can't share one with Grandma. She leaves the house angry to go buy groceries. My son is shrieking denials and telling us we're mean, while my daughter is sticking her tongue out at him because the episode is delaying me helping her make a chicken wire or papier-mâché art project. The puppy needs to be fed and walked and is pacing around looking for a place on the floor. It's 12, day 401. I haven't had lunch and the coffee is out. The shrieking is getting louder. Calmly I say, please talk in a lower voice. And my son pins his fingers in his ears and runs out of the front door. Now, 75 or 125 days ago, I'd have been yelling into the mix. You're grounded, or apologize to your mother this instant. We're never baking anything for you ever again. But I learned to try to be calm. It doesn't always work. Sometimes I lose my mind and say actual mean things like, shut up, you inconsiderate, selfish, spoiled brats, or how dare you talk to your mother in that tone of voice? Do you have any idea how hard she works? Engage guilt shaming. During the first few weeks, I would just start to cry at the table, right in front of my kids, tears streaming down my cheeks. Grown dad crying while his kids fight over having to write a paragraph for school or because they're tired of PB&J for lunch. I'm just one person, guys. I don't work in a restaurant, and I don't know how they're teaching you math, and I cannot magically make it all better. Please stop fighting and yelling, please. I can't do this anymore. That sort of thing. Let me tell you, that whole thing of talking to children like they're adults does not really work for my kids. But also, they're intimidated by adults, and a screaming or crying adult can still be really scary for a kid in a way that a 48-year-old may have forgotten. Take away the old routine, put everybody in a box together for an unknown period of time, take away interaction with similarly aged friends. It gets real fast. I know some of the responses in this thread are not just toxic, they're downright illegal and horrible. And I'm not talking about that here. But hey, I remember overhearing my mom telling her friend she didn't expect anyone to come to my big 13th birthday party because he's a nerd. It hurt. Was I a nerd because my mom dressed me in hand-me-downs and never helped me learn any sports or enforced better hygiene, and she was not able to buy me new glasses every time they broke? Yeah, tape on the nose bridge. I was shy. It hurt. Still hurts today. I guess I'm saying I've never done anything more difficult than be a parent. And so many of the horrible things I've read in this thread, I have to be honest, I've thought about them. But thankfully bit my tongue. We can't have intimacy because your kids won't leave us alone? Check. You're a schmuck, kid? Check. I just need time away from you? Check. And so on. Hurtful, terrible thoughts that I hope I will never say to my kids. But people make mistakes, and we all, kids included, especially the nerds among us, need to be able to handle being the target of those mistakes, unpack them, and move on. I know, though it's human nature. After 18 child-rearing years, after all the love and giggles, there are also a few things in my kids' heads that came out of me, things that probably still hurt them. I'm sorry. I hope they can forgive me like I forgave my mom's. Story 18. She always said, "You're just like your father whenever he was mad at one of us." She never said anything good about him. I got that he cheated and that's bad, but not even one good thing. At any time he came to visit once a year, she would always say, "I'm going to leave you guys with your father and leave because you guys have given me a headache." Right now my dad hasn't visited in almost 3 years. And he doesn't pick up the phone anymore because he's tired of my mom calling him to ask for money every week. If he doesn't pick up from her, she always tells me to call him and ask for money myself because he won't listen to her and will listen to me because I'm his favorite child. I got so tired of my mom calling me every time she needed money and telling me to call dad and shouting at me if I refused and guilt-tripping me into calling him. And due to this, I deleted his number from my phone. When she found out I deleted his number, she was mad for a bit, but eventually forgave me. Story 19. I'm a kid who was a victim to a toxic, narcissistic mother. Here are the things I remembered most she said to me. "I don't have time to love you and cuddle you. Why do you care what your mom thinks of you? You're stupid and incapable of adult independent living. You're the redhead stepchild, lazy child, naughty child, stubborn child. Why can't you be more like your brother or sister? I'm tired of taking care of you. I could make you cry with my insults. You should be thankful I still feed and give you a roof to live under." There's a lot of really mean things she's done, but this is a small percentage of the horrible things she said. I'm no longer living with her anymore and live with dad because he actually loves me and gives care. Last time back in my home state that I love most, Wisconsin. It severely messed me up as a kid because I was the scapegoat. I ended up being a user and attempted to end it all many times. She also harmed me every day after school in elementary and middle school. Yeah, it was crushing to have your own mom treat you that way. I cried when other kids' moms treated me with true real love. Some of them knew I was severely mistreated and treated me with extra care when I came over. Story 20. My dad was mistreating my mom and a little heavy-handed from time to time with my brother and I, and one night he came home, angry out of his head, and hurt my mom while she held us, hoping it would deter him. A few minutes later, he comes back, drags me downstairs and tells me to stay, goes and gets some petrol from the shed and tries to make mom choose between myself and my brother, to which he's going to take with him when he ends himself. Mom couldn't choose, and I was downstairs next to him, so I got the short straw. Police got there in time and stopped it all, but it was pretty bad. A couple of years later, I'd stopped speaking to him for a short period because he pretended to come see us after he'd left home to sleep with Mom as a power play. Got to Christmas, and I thought maybe I was being silly or unfair, so I decided to call him and sort of try to act as if we went back to normal. Threatened me if I ever stopped talking to him again or disobeyed. Story 21. So my family used to tell me I was fat all the time. I'm not sure if where I live has anything to do with it because my boyfriend's parents would do this too. I did Taekwondo my whole life, like 12 years of it. I was fit and strong, but I didn't know better. I had self-image issues and really thought I was fat. Now I see pictures of back then and I'm not fat at all. Same with my boyfriend, he was always told he was fat, since he was like 6 years old. He did sports during all of this too. He played soccer a lot. He was thin and fit. Now that he's actually fat, his parents say stuff like, "Don't you wish you were as thin as you were X years back?" Like, seriously, dudes, get off. Back then he started eating a lot because his mother wouldn't let him eat anything. His grandmother gifted him chocolates and stuff, and mom would only let him eat one and hide or give away the rest. Guess what? When he went to friends' houses, he would eat all he could. All of those "you're getting fat" comments only hurt self-esteem and don't actually motivate anyone to lose weight. At least it was like that for us. Story 22. Your opinion doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's your mom's and my life. Said my mom's husband to 11-year-old me when asked how I felt about a rundown, dilapidated fixer-upper that they wanted to buy that would require us to pack and move again. Taking me away from my school again, to live in a POS house again. When I told him the house scared me and I didn't think I liked it, those were his words. I hear them in my head every day. 22 years later, I've included my son's opinions and take them into consideration always when we're facing a big new change. Because my husband and I realize that the one individual who will be impacted the most by our decisions has a right to openly share his opinion. Of course, ultimately we do make the decisions, but I would never exclude my child's thoughts and feelings in the matter during the decision process. For context, we moved once a year for 10 years. One time when we moved in the middle of the school year, all our moves disrupted my schooling and we were constantly moving to new school districts. They didn't even bother to re-enroll me in the new school. I missed last half of 6th grade and then jumped straight to 7th. The moves always happened because mom's husband wouldn't hold a job or they'd simply get bored and start their search for their perfect home again with all these grand plans. They never held any regard for me or the impact it had on me. We never stayed long enough for me to make friends, or as soon as I would start to, off we went again to a new town and a new school. They still move frequently to this day. They've never settled down, but that's okay. It's their life and I'm over it. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.